back, relax, you got nothing to lose. What do you think I'm about to show you? The female of the species is more deadly than the male. Deadly. It's only a movie, you can say it again. Just wait till you see what I did at the end. The female of the species is more deadly than the male. The female of the species is more deadly.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the More Deadly podcast, where we review horror films exclusively directed by women-identified directors that prove that the female of the species is more deadly than the male. I'm your co-host, Rachel, and joining me is one of my favorite people on the entire planet. As above, so below, it's Ariel.
Hi.
I
like that.
You like that? Is that the
Yeah.
new? Is that, all right, cool.
Yeah,
cool,
that's good.
Cool. But that's not all, because we also have some truly infernal, you could say, guests joining us today. Just a handful of my very favorite friendly neighborhood Satanists. It's the crew from the absolutely fantastic, I'm not exaggerating, that's how good they are, podcast Black Mass Appeal. Great name, by the way. I don't know if I've told you that before.
Thank you. You're going to give us an inflated ego. I don't know. It's not a good plan.
Yeah, I mean, I try to use my power for good and for evil, so I don't know which one this one is today. So joining us is Daniel.
Hello, testing 666.
Oh, I see what you did there. Tabitha.
I am Tabitha, the Antichrist. Hello.
And Simone.
Hi, I'm Simone, and all I really want in this life is Rebecca Romaine's wardrobe from the movie we watched.
Right? Oh my God.
All
that
those robes and dresses.
That dress is an erogenous zone for me.
I'll take the body that she inhibits as well if we're passing stuff out.
Why not? Awesome. So this is such a treat for us because we're big fans of Black Mass Appeal. I told you before the show, everyone that we told you were coming on today was very excited because there are a lot of fans in our, group of friends. It's so funny. The first time I was on your show, my best friend's husband was like, I was just listening to my Satanist podcast and Rachel was on there. What the hell is going on? So first of all, we just want to take a moment to get to know each of you, starting with the show itself. So let's do some plugs. Everybody likes a good plug, right? So tell our listeners about Black Mass Appeal, Simone.
Yeah. So Black Mass Appeal is a podcast about Satanism by Satanists. And we cover everything from like the history of Satanism and how it kind of manifests itself today, the history of the religion, the literature. So everything from the Romantics to obviously the Bible to more contemporary stuff, more pop culture, movies, TVs, books, that kind of thing. Every week every 2 weeks, I guess, is a new topic that's related to Satanism. And it could be fun, it can be funny, it could be serious. But the goal is to kind of educate people about Satanism and where it comes from and dispelling myths. So, the disclaimer, don't eat the babies. We don't sacrifice the virgins, no matter what the movies say. Right. I mean, maybe we're just too lazy and we haven't gotten around to it. I don't know. I don't know what all the other Satanists are up to these days.
I personally, I'm a terrible cook, so that's my fault.
But baby seems so well marbled. You know what I mean? I feel like you could get a really good cut from just about anywhere on that thing.
Look, here's what nobody realizes. Baby is like tofu. Everybody says they have a good recipe, but nobody really does.
Right. Also, the press for that is so big. Who has room in their storage?
I will add, in addition, on top of the disclaimer that Simone just provided, it is possible that to the uninitiated, we are sending some mixed messages with the film tonight. We'll get to that.
I know. I'm hoping there's going to be some real hellfire raining down upon this movie from you guys tonight, because I feel like maybe it's not super accurate, or maybe it is. I don't know. I guess we'll find out. I don't know. Mm-hmm. So, okay, you guys are from the Bay Area Satanic Temple. Can you tell us a little bit about that, Daniel?
Well, disclaimer there, we are not the Satanic Temple. We are
shit.
No problem. It's actually good to get that out of the way because people may make that mistake occasionally.
I'm just setting you up for this. I know what it is.
Thank you. We are Satanic Bay Area. We are a local grassroots independent satanic community rooted in San Francisco and the surrounding region. When we say in local and independent, that means our members may be members of other Satanist religions and organizations like the Satanic Temple, for example, or they may not. That's up to them. We take like-minded Satanists from all walks as long as they are interested in being part of our community and share our general communal goals and get along with everybody. Most of us are atheists. I think pretty much all of us are atheists. And if your listeners are confused about how you can be both an atheist and a Satanist, we have some episodes about that, so they can listen in on those.
Yeah, just a few.
But even a few of our friends might have some more eclectic ideas about God and the devil. And for the most part, like I said, as long as people get along, we don't like to police people's beliefs a whole lot because no good comes of that in my experience. And so that is the that is the rough delineation between us and other Satanist groups you may have heard of. I think the analogy that Simone likes to use in the past is that if a group like the Satanic Temple is your church, we are, say, the local Bible study /knit/bake sale group you might come to afterwards. To meet people who are don't necessarily go to the same church, but maybe have the same vibe. And again, that goes for any number of other Satanist religions that our members may be. There are also people who are not members of any other organization, just have their own satanic community and practice through the community we create here, which is also great.
Yeah, you guys do such cool events. Like you've got your Christmas event, you've got these Black Masses that you guys do. If people want to know more, if they want to hang out, they want to participate, can you tell them a little bit about what you guys do?
Well, should I give the plugs now or should we just...
I mean, whatever you want to do. I thought that was part of the plugs, Daniel. But
just go for it.
Yeah, we're in the zone.
If folks are curious to learn more and they want to look us up, they can find us on Facebook, on Instagram as Satanic Bay Area. You can follow us on Twitter as @SatanicSF. You can also catch Tabitha on TikTok. The handle there is @DailyBaffirmations. Check us out at SatanicBayArea.com. Look at our Google Calendar for all upcoming events. And if you have any specific questions, you can fire us a message at SatanicBayArea@gmail.com or as BlackMassAppealPod@gmail.com.
Right. Or talk into a goblet of blood and you'll get that message, right?
Yeah.
No? Daniel's like, I'm very serious. This is not amusement.
Well, and so I'd be remiss to, leave out the plugs for our show. So Black Mass Appeal, you can find us at blackmassappeal.com as Black Mass Appeal on all the social medias. And, so Black Mass Appeal is a podcast, is a show, comes out every other week. And it is a product of Satanic Bay Area because we are all admins for Satanic Bay Area. So there has been some confusion. Black Mass Appeal is not its own sect or anything. It's a show. It's entertainment and information. And then we have separately the Satanic Bay Area community, which is where they have the events and the hanging out and the talking and the fun.
That's awesome. That's really great. I love the show because I feel like I learned so much listening to it, particularly like you said around misconceptions about modern Satanism. The thing that I remember first being struck by is really early on, you did an episode on the tenets. And I realized how in sync with my own beliefs they were. And I never realized it because I was very much raised in the church, evangelical. And so even though I had broken away from that and I'm an atheist, the only information that I had was the stuff that I learned, when the Satanist would come and tell us about burning his books made of human skin. You know what I mean? Right. The gist, right? And so I found it absolutely fascinating. And I think wherever people's spiritual beliefs lie, it's totally valuable information to have. I think you can learn so much from the show, if only just to understand something about the world. You know what I mean? I think I personally was really grateful to have some misconceptions kind of get a re-education on it a little bit. And the show's just fun. You guys are really fun. Lots of great information. I loved you did I can't remember the name of the book, but you did this one on this, I think it was Renaissance sort of satanic book about this guy who had a lot of sexual issues, but it was a really great deep dive and I had never heard of it before. And that's the kind of stuff that you get with the show, is this mix of humor and also really interesting historical information, as well as re-education about misconceptions.
We're finding out that a lot of people's sexual hangups back in the day is what's responsible for a lot of religion. So
yeah.
To fill in a couple of blanks there, so the book that Rachel just referenced there is Là-Bas, the only French 19th century best-selling Satanism thriller that provoked two wizards to have a duel. That actually happened, by the way. That's not part of the book. That's a thing that happened when people were fighting over the publication of this book. So check out that episode if you want to learn way too much about those dudes. Second of all, I would say books bound with human skin are totally overrated because nobody wants to have to spend the weekend moisturizing their library. It's incredibly inconvenient.
Ooh, pro tip. I like it.
Yes, absolutely.
It sounds like the Satanic Tenets episode you were talking about was maybe our very first show, Satanism 101.
It might have been.
I would recommend people, that being our first show, there was a learning curve there, but that was a good one. I would recommend to people want to get caught up, they check out episode 101, Satanism 101, part 2, in which we kind of expanded a little bit on those, on many different diversities of Satanist beliefs, some of which are awesome, some of which were less awesome, but all of which we can learn a little bit about. Oh, and by the way, if anyone out there is wondering, has just no context for us, is wondering, how did these weirdos get on this show? Well, it's because actually Rachel has been on our show a couple of times, and one episode going way back to, gosh, I think it was episode 30 that you did.
It was
our first Satanism and horror roundtable discussion, and then our more recent The Exorcist episode, in which we discussed, is The Exorcist a Christmas movie? Which of course it isn't, but it did come out at Christmas, so I felt like it was a good discussion to have for us around Christmas, because what do Satanists talk about at Christmas? Well, The Exorcist, of course.
Right. It's like the Die Hard of Satanism. I got it. Yeah.
I mean, of course, that's a good cross purposes for me, who has a Hans Gruber tattoo on her left shoulder. So,
oh my god, I think I just fall in love on the show.
It's perfect for Rachel.
We're gonna have to talk about this off the air because I'm gonna need
we can talk about
details.
Die Hard.
Is it him like falling off the building? What is the Hans group? What
portrait? Maybe
it is a portrait of him when he is on the walkie-talkie talking to John for the first time.
Oh,
and he's looking for his detonators, and John clearly has them, and he calls him, Roy Rogers, and then the response.
Yippee-ki-yay. That is amazing. Oh my god, I love you. I already did, but it just leveled up.
I just also got a Shining tattoo, the Stanley Kubrick really version of The Shining. That's my latest tattoo in my collection of movie tattoos. Oh. So maybe, am I going to have to get a Satanic Panic tattoo? We'll see. We'll talk about it.
Maybe. I'm very into all of these tattoos. We're gonna have to do like a separate spin-off episode where we just talk about your tattoos because they're dope.
I got a whole library.
That's amazing. Before we move on, though, I just wanted to say that not only is everything Rachel said about your show right, it's so informative. You guys are super charming and really funny, but I also think that you cover things with such sort of emotional intelligence that I really appreciate too. You did this episode, I don't know, a year or two ago on disability and how to make your spaces and your rituals more inclusive. And the way that you guys handled that was just so good. And the way that you all were willing to admit past failings and how you've made changes to make it better in the future. I just thought that was so great because so many people would not be willing to do that on a public forum, I just really appreciated that.
I mean, so one of the things that I like about Satanism that was one of the things that drew me to it was how inclusive it is. Yeah. Because when we're looking at these mainstream religions, we see them purposefully, shun and exclude and ostracize people who are different, people who are, LGBTQ, people who are, disabled, people who are perhaps minorities, people who are just, I don't know, really into heavy metal and Dungeons and Dragons. It doesn't matter. If you're different, that's when they kind of shun you. And we've sort of collected, and formed this community of these people who have found the common ground of like a belief set, but we still celebrate our differences and learn from each other and try and make sure that we're always working to improve, because that's another thing. Some other religions are just like, you do it this way and it's the only way, and we've never changed it and we never will. And meanwhile, I feel like Satanism, which is a fairly new religion, is still kind of finding its feet and learning and changing and growing. And I mean, that's how you get better human beings. So I'm all for it.
Absolutely.
But we should be careful to distinguish as we say that, even though everything that was just said is true, that the point of this show, and indeed the point of our show, is not to proselytize or convert anybody to Satanism or anything weird like that. People should make their own decisions about what kind of religion they want to join, if any at all. Most people probably shouldn't be Satanists, to be honest. It's kind of a weird decision to make about your life, but you will feel, if you feel so compelled, we can maybe introduce you to some folks. In the meantime, hopefully even non-Satanists who listen to the program learn a little bit something. Although I will say, and Tabitha, you can confirm this, that Satanist or non-Satanist alike, if you want to drop by any of our religious gatherings, there are often cupcakes and occasionally very cute snakes. Is that right?
Ooh.
This is correct. I can confirm.
Very cute snakes. I'm intrigued.
Yeah, we had a show
if you find me, I have stickers.
Oh my God. This is like Bible study.
Well, so our last event was sort of an anti-St. Patrick's Day deal, where we were deciding to celebrate snakes instead of celebrating the dude who, quote unquote, drove them out. And yes, we had real snakes there as a show and tell. And I got to learn a little bit about a reticulated python and a king snake and a coral snake. And it was really cool.
That's awesome.
In fact, it's really funny. You could hear this anecdote on our upcoming BMA episode that is not out yet at the time of this recording, but like our snake guy texts me like 3 hours beforehand that day saying, "Hey, just so you know, it's illegal for me to bring constrictor snakes into a public park in San Francisco." And I'm like,
oh.
I was like, okay, man, I don't want you to get any heat. Leave the bring any kind of snake you want. We're very easy to please in this case. And then he shows up with a reticulated python, which is the biggest constrictor snake in the world.
That's such a specific law, too. I'm surprised at that.
I am surprised, too. I'm guessing it's because you don't want them to get loose and pose a threat to the natural ecosystem. That's not the point. The point is, I said, you don't have to bring a constrictor snake. And somehow in translation, that became bring the biggest constrictor in the world. And I'm not complaining. Lance, our snake guy, is a really great guy and a good friend, and we're so lucky that he came by and showed us these really, really beautiful specimens. I'm just not 100% sure what happened there communications wise.
Maybe he just wanted you to know he was about to break the law.
Maybe. It's an entirely new kind of sin for us.
He was just preparing us so that if we saw cops, you grab a snake and you run. Just grab a snake and you go.
There you go.
Get the fuck out of there.
Get out of there.
That is my kind of party.
Let me cue up the Benny Hill music.
Yes. Oh my God.
Amazing. Yeah, everybody definitely hit the subscribe button. Get yourself some Black Mass Appeal in your life. You will not regret it. And don't worry, we're going to plug it again at the end of the show. So if you missed it this time, you'll get another chance. So let's move on to maybe your horror fandom. We like to kind of get into understanding your perspective as horror fans and as horror nerds, I hope, because you're definitely on a horror nerd podcast. What are some horror movies that each of you really love? Some favorites for you guys?
Well, we can start with The Shining, hence the tattoo. Yeah, I like this kind of slow burn, kind of artsy horror movies like The Shining. I also like, things like The Blair Witch Project, The Ring. Silence of the Lambs is another favorite of mine.
Mm-hmm.
We've spent quarantine or pandemic knocking out a bunch of the horror films that I just never got to. So we've seen every single Phantasm, Friday the 13th, Halloween. Actually, we also hit some action franchises as well.
Nice.
But I mean, once you've sat through, God, how many Halloween movies are there, Daniel?
There are a lot.
Just... It's a lot. I don't typically like kind of slashery ones, but that's sort of like pick and choose. Like it's a case by case basis.
Where do you stand on Halloween Kills?
I liked it. I did. Okay, so I did like it, but there was a lot of So we saw it in the theater, so I didn't actually say it out loud because I'm not rude like that. But in my mind, I'm like screaming at the screen a lot, like, what the fuck are you doing, you idiots? Which I realize is like part of the horror experience. So it was fitting. It was certainly fitting, but just, constantly in my mind screaming, you have to decapitate him. You have to destroy the brain. Why is no one listening to me? Have you seen a horror movie before?
Yeah. I'm not a fan of that movie, famously, on this podcast, but I do love the Iron Maiden from that. Are you familiar with the Iron Maiden from Halloween Kills?
Like the torture device, or did Iron Maiden
the lady that shows up to kill, like, and the evil dies tonight with an iron?
She just has an iron in her hand instead of some kind of normal weapon.
I'll find you a photo.
Well, I've seen Home Alone, which one might say is the children's version of Die Hard, and Marv gets hit in the face with a hot iron, and that shit did some damage. That burn was there the rest of the movie.
Point.
Yep. All right, internet. It looks like the joke's on you. How about you, Daniel? What about you? What is some horror movies that you love?
Well, generally, if people ask my favorite horror movie or favorite movie in general, the safe diplomatic answer I give is Alien, because 1, I do love that movie. 2,
so good.
Who's gonna tell me I'm wrong, right? Like, that's just
right.
That's the rare movie that crosses pretty much all boundaries. But to be honest, I spend less time watching movies like that and more time watching a lot of pre-code 30s or silent era weird, obscure, slightly sadistic, often admittedly quite problematic, as we say these days, movies and those. In fact, just as here on Zombie Girls, you have a number of sub shows and sub themes for different programs. If I had to do a horror themed sub podcast, it would probably be, this is not the title I would go with, but the theme would be, this movie's pretty racist, but because unfortunately that describes a lot of my favorite films, like The Wolfman, The Most Dangerous Game, White Zombie. I love that movie, but oof, wow, yeah, exactly. Any number of Val Lewton films from the 40s, so a lot of movies that I probably shouldn't even admit out loud that I've seen, much less are my favorites, are my favorites.
No, I mean, I have a strong love for those movies as well, but you just got to admit to yourself that there are some serious issues with them.
I mean, not only admit it, I'm like, let's talk about this. Let's like exactly. I said, I would spend an hour to 2 hours on a podcast talking about it if I thought there was an audience for it, which presumably there is not, which is probably good.
You might be surprised.
I disagree, Daniel. I disagree, and I would love to come on to talk about our one of our shared favorites is The Black Cat with stars Forrest and Bela. So good. Art Deco perfection.
Amazing.
That one's a winner. Nothing really racist in that one, but a lot of weird shit.
Oh yeah. Love that low bar for the 40s. Awesome. Okay, how about you, Tabitha?
Okay, so first of all, I like really terrible horror movies. Okay. I like just the bottom of the barrel, cheap garbage that you can put on and literally ignore the entire time or laugh at. Like, I live in that place, and probably someday we'll make one of those movies and put it up on Amazon, because guess what? Literally anyone can put a movie on Amazon. Anybody.
Yeah,
you could record your cat for an hour and a half and be like, this is the cat movie, and put it up there, and I will probably watch it.
Rachel, is that your new job?
But the genres that I usually like the most, I love exorcism movies. Include The Exorcist is actually probably one of my very favorite movies. And I also like Antichrist movies. So like The Omen is another movie I absolutely love.
Great one.
Eli, which came out just a couple of years ago, is also just an absolutely, sorry, kind of spoiled it, but it's an absolutely great film. It's unfortunate because every time I want to bring that movie up, I have to, you want to know? And I also really like ghost movies, like haunted house movies, and especially if it has a sheet ghost. If you put a fucking sheet ghost in your movie, thank you.
Did
That's funny.
Tab, did you like Paranormal Activity 3? Because that was one of my favorite sheet ghost gags.
Yes. In fact,
It was
I
good.
actually have liked almost all of the Paranormal Activity movies.
Okay, me too.
Like, they're not good,
No,
but
they're
I
fun,
liked
though.
them.
Yeah.
In fact, not to get too far in the weeds here, but over the last couple of years, with our many hours of quarantine watching, Tabitha and I have like anthropologically discovered a weird subgenre of horror movie that I don't think has a name. And here's what it is. You'll go to these Amazon movies where, like I said, anybody can put their movie on Amazon these days. And sometimes you'll find these really low grade exorcism or Satanism themed horror films that are obviously made by churchy people to preach at you, which is sometimes entertaining, often just baffling. But those aren't the movies I'm talking about. The movies I'm talking about are like the rare slice of like weird, preachy, Satanism themed direct to Amazon horror film where you're like, I think this is supposed to be Jesus-y, but it's really hard to tell, either because of like sheer filmmaking incompetence or just a lack of clarity in terms of like the language of cinema. Sometimes go ahead.
You know what's cool about that is that sometimes you can actually just email the director and ask them what the fuck's going on with the movie, which we have done.
Really? What happened?
Well, there's only one person that got back to us and was like trying to kind of explain the plot. And I mean, we kind of felt bad because it was like, man, this guy's really sincere, so let's just leave him alone. But like, you know, like it was hilarious that he even answered.
But like, here's what'll be happening. We'll be watching these movies sometimes and like, often they're bad. Occasionally they're okay. Sometimes they're even scary. And so like, you don't think anything of it until it's like, boy, these guys have been sitting in this preacher's office talking about Bible verses for a weirdly long time. I mean, this perhaps proselytizing, but it's so hard to tell.
You got like horror honeypotted with that thing.
There's only one movie, I'm not going to recommend it, but only one movie that I'm going to name the title of, which you can find on Amazon, and I think even on YouTube. It's called Red Letters, which is this movie about this priest and this cop investigating this supposedly satanic murder. And watch this movie sometime, or don't if you know it's good for you, but watch this movie sometime and tell me, like, was this made by people who are trying to convert us or by people who are trying to scare us? It's kind of impossible to tell.
Okay, I found it. I'm going to tag it for later.
I apologize on our behalf for the movie-going experience you are about to have.
One of our podcast, Stream Queens, is about streaming things on the internet.
Oh my gosh, you guys should totally do that.
We might.
That might be
She's
funny.
made me watch some stinkers, man. I feel like, you know.
Yeah, she's owed. It's payback time.
Right? I will be watching this later. See, look at this, people. Aren't you glad I brought them on? Look at these excellent recommendations you're getting. Red Letter. Let's start. It's not a movie, it's a movement. Let's all watch it. Awesome. Okay, so what are some films or filmmakers, Eli would be a good example, that you think people are sleeping on? Nobody talks about it, or you don't feel like it gets enough love that listeners should be watching aside from Red Letters?
Gosh, I don't know. Like, I like paying attention to some of the emerging directors, Robert Eggers of The Witch, Ari Aster of Hereditary and Midsommar. Really interested to see where they go next. I feel like we have like these kind of big horror movie characters who sort of transcend their franchises. Like, you know, you get your Jasons and your Freddys or whatever, but I feel like the Phantasm crew kind of got left out of the conversation.
It's true.
Now, it is a special place in my heart because it was partially filmed in Oakland. And I also just love that Reggie Bannister, who's made it through all of the movies. And then I just have to give them credit for keeping it going, because there's 5 Phantasm movies. Like the first 2 are like maybe like 10 years apart. Then there's like a couple years between 2 and 3. And then we start to get a real big gap. So like between 3 and 4 is like another 10, 12 years. And then between 4 and 5 is like something like 15 years. in
I don't think I
between,
even
they still
realized
get
there
the
was a
original
fifth one.
cast.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So just mad props to the oh god, his name just flew out of my head. The
Joe
director
Dante?
producer.
Is it Joe
No,
Dante? No, it's
Don
not. Coscarelli. That's who it is. Yes. Teamwork.
And so I just feel like the tall man and his backstory, which, you know, is not perfect, but what slasher or horror movie monster's backstory is perfect. I just feel like it got a little slept on. It should get more appreciation.
I agree. They have a special place in my heart because I don't know how old you guys are, probably younger than me, but I remember they were a staple of the horror section of, you know, in the video rental store. So you would go in and you'd see that ball with the knives on it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
As a kid, I was too scared to rent them. But
It's got the great imagery because it's got Angus Scrimm as the tall man. It's very cool and intimidating. And then you've got the cool silver ball with the knives that come out. The mausoleum backdrops, little kind of imp things could use another draft, I guess you could say. But it's got such good imagery that really sticks with you.
Phantasm is such a weird franchise because you watch that first movie that came out in 77, and it's almost artsy. It's very surreal. Part of the surrealism is they ran out of money, and so there's movies actually unfinished. And so if you're confused about stuff, that's not your fault. It's arguably by design. But when I say surrealist, like there are shots in seeing this movie where when they were done, like, did I just see that? I'm actually not even sure what just happened. But it's really scary and freaky, and it's great, and it feels very high-minded. And then you wait 10 years and they make a sequel and it's just an Evil Dead knockoff. Which
so bad.
Which is fine in its own right, but it's like I was not expecting that. And then you watch Casarelli's other movies, it's like, oh, Evil Dead knockoffs is kind of what he wanted to do anyway.
Yeah.
He just did this first movie on acid, I'm guessing. And it established a tone that is not carried through for the rest of his filmography. He also did Bubba Hotep, by the way, if you need any more evidence that he really just wanted to be making Evil Dead. Which, again, great movie, but totally not the same thing.
Yeah, he even got Bruce Campbell in that one. Dreams were coming true that day.
Well, I'm going to cheat a little bit because I'm going to have people or movies that we've talked about on the show.
Okay.
One of them is Anything for Jackson.
Oh, yes. That's a great one.
Yeah. Really had a lot of fun with that movie. And I really, really hope more people get to see it just because, I don't think there's very few horror movies that are perfect, but there's a couple of really good scares in it, and I had a lot of fun. And then the other one is actually a comedy. It's called Letters to Satan Claus.
Oh, I don't think I've even heard of that.
Write that down for Christmas episode, Ariel.
Yeah.
It is a horror comedy though, so I don't know if that's in your bag.
Oh, love it. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I think we had the director on. Did we have the director on?
Yes.
Awesome. And they were a lot of fun, and they previously made romantic comedies.
Oh,
and just
Lifetime Channel.
Yeah, like full bore Lifetime Channel romantic comedies where
the poster art for this I'm looking up, it looks very kind of Hallmark Channel like.
And
it's directed by a woman.
Silly, and it's really great, and I highly suggest that one too.
Next Christmas, Rachel.
I know we're always looking for good Christmas options.
Yeah.
We're like, are we just going to do Black Christmas every year? No, we can't do that.
Quick caveat, by the way, I believe the director of Letters to Satan Claus identifies as non-binary, but I don't think they would mind being featured on More Deadly for all that. I feel like they would actually probably buy into the vibe of this show pretty hard.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Okay. And then, you know what, we say women identified, but there's definitely space for non-binary.
Yeah, absolutely.
Directors on here. We had this whole conversation about that upcoming film. We're all going to World's Fair. So we're kind of behind the scenes talking about how we're going to kind of maybe adjust some of our language so that it becomes more inclusive around that, because I think that's super important. And now we need it for Christmas anyway. So
yeah.
So how about you, Daniel? What are we sleeping on that we've missed out on that we need to be watching?
I've got a weird answer because until relatively recently, I wouldn't have thought this is a movie people are sleeping on, but I just recently, again, rewatched Carnival of Souls, and I've come to find out there are a lot of people, I guess, who are not horror buffs, who are not big on this movie that came out in the early 60s independent, really, really indie film at the time. And again, probably most Zombie Girls listeners have at least heard of this movie, if not seen it. But if you haven't, go and check it out. Really odd film. First time filmmaker, only time filmmaker. Lots of actors in here who were in their first or only roles. And it's again, very strange, surreal, kinds of artsy movie, but also charmingly amateurish is maybe the word that I would use for it.
That is a good description. Yeah.
Very Twilight Zone-y in the term of the atmosphere it's going for.
Yeah.
Actually, in my opinion, kind of a scary and disturbing movie because it is a movie about the fear of mortality. And also, I feel after watching it the most recent time, I feel like this is probably a movie about, these days we would say, having mental health problems that are not being respected by the people around you. In those days, they probably would have called it a movie about going insane. In either case, I feel as if our heroine in this movie has this feeling that the world is hostile to her in ways she can't articulate, and the people around her are tremendously unhelpful about this in ways that only exacerbate it. And so I felt that theme was particularly pronounced the last time I watched it. The only advice that I would give people if you've never seen the movie before is definitely don't watch the weird colorized version that's going around, because this is a great example of how black and white photography, when well done, can add an awful lot to a movie, and it can cover up an awful lot in your movie too. Once you turn, especially the weird grainy fake colorized stuff that they did really makes this movie look incredibly cheap. And this movie was incredibly cheap, so it didn't need that little goose, you know. There are scenes in this movie that, again, in the original look to me to be very bizarre and haunting, and then you put those strange colorized filters over it, and it just looks like an industrial film, which indeed is what this director made for most of his career.
Yeah.
And great thing about this movie, by the way, it's one of those weird movies that got put in the public domain immediately because somebody forgot to carry a 1 or whatever the fuck. And so you can watch it anywhere, including on YouTube right now. In fact, I think there's a pretty good print that got uploaded to YouTube a couple of years ago. So check that out if you haven't.
Awesome. Great recommendations across the board.
Yeah.
I'm ashamed to say it, even though I'm familiar with Carnival of Souls, I have not watched it. So I guess I'm going to need to correct that.
Let us know what you think if you do, or let me know at least.
I will hit you up in the Discord. So speaking of films and filmmakers that you maybe love, tonight we're going to be talking about Satanic Panic by director Chelsea Stardust. So first of all, I guess I wanted to know what made you guys decide on this one?
Well, you hadn't done it yet, and
I mean that's a valid reason.
And we discussed this. We did discuss this on Black Mass Appeal, but not that extensively. Actually, we didn't have an episode about it. We just talked about it in passing in a couple of shows. So we hadn't really dived into it ourselves either. So there are very mercenary, utilitarian reasons for it. Tabitha, Simone, was there anything else about it that appealed to you?
We had a screening of it for our Discord, or didn't we? I'm pretty sure
we did with the Patreon backers. Yeah.
Yes, there you go. So that's kind of where, like, we didn't really talk about it too much on the show, but we we're sitting there in, our streaming, our shared streaming experience, and just talking shit in the chat, which made it even better.
Gotta love a group watch. That's how you get through some real
bombs.
That's how we got through the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
That's the only reason I got through that movie.
Awesome. Okay, well that sounds great. Those are all perfectly good reasons. I was very curious what you guys would pick. Unfortunately, we had done your first pick, which was The Love Witch, and I will say I love that movie. I hope you guys do too.
BMA plug. We actually had on a biller on episode 15 of Black Mass Appeal.
That's amazing.
Love her.
She's so talented.
So interesting. She's great. Okay, awesome. So I know that because this show focuses on women identified directors, you guys are somewhat limited in your options. And I was wondering if there is one last question before we get into our review. If there is a movie that you think does a really good job of representing Satanism as you know it.
Ooh, good question.
Ooh, that is a good question. There's a part of Anything for Jackson that so it's not a horror comedy, but there was this one part of the movie where this older couple, goes to their local satanic meeting. That looks like it's in a rec hall or something. And they finish up their, saying whatever their version of the Dark Lord's prayer is or whatever. And the guy's like, okay, well, there's going to be cookies and refreshments on the table over there, and go ahead and help yourselves. Thank you to Martha for baking the chocolate chip cookies. We really appreciate it. I'm just like dying. First of all, we would love to have access to like a rec hall or something, because we're always looking for venues for our events. But a lot of our events are potlucks. And, I don't know if Satan has granted our group with particular culinary skills, but it's always delicious. I mean, you'll have to have Tabitha's deviled eggs and onion dip. And so it was a small part of this movie, but I think it kind of captured how mundane a lot of it actually is, because we're just people. We're not worshiping anything. We're not sacrificing anything. We're just kind of getting together and talking about our interests and our beliefs. And yes, occasionally we want to dress up in our goth best and eat cookies.
I mean, honestly, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, it does.
Any other movies stand out to you as ones that, get it right?
I think this is kind of the other side of the coin from that, because yes, that is the true calling of Satanism, is sitting around somewhere and eating. But as far as like the way I feel about Satanism, I would definitely go with kind of the theme of the witch.
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the way that like the breaking the chains and freeing yourself from the situation that you're in, and realizing at the end that nobody can hurt you anymore. Like you're free. You're done. You're allowed to be who you are. Like that to me is really important, and like really expresses a lot of how I felt when I became a Satanist, and still to this day.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That. I really love that.
Yeah, there are essentially no movies about Satanists that depict actual Satanism. Instead, we get, as in the film we're going to talk about tonight, sort of Hollywood movie Satanism, which is actually fine. That's entertaining in its own right. There are a few documentaries about real Satanists, the most recent and famous of which being the 2019 film Hail Satan ? Which, by the way, you can go back to episode 45 to listen to director Penny Lane on BMA talk about that. Also, several of our friends are in that movie, so there is that. I would say in terms of the themes and values that we hold closest in Satanism, a movie that we usually put is actually on our Satanic cinema list, cinema with an S, because you let me make the list, and that's the kind of thing you're going to end up with, is the modern Guillermo del Toro classic Pan's Labyrinth, which is a great film for Satanists and Satanism, not only because of the beautiful atmosphere and the way that it combines history and folklore with contemporary concerns, but then also the central message of that, of questioning and defying authority, and being able to determine the difference between things that are institutionally correct and morally concerning is one that is deeply important, and especially the final message being that it is ultimately a profoundly personal choice what the right thing to do is. It is not arbitrary, as we see in the movie. It is actually deeply, profoundly concerned with other people and has incredible ramifications, but nevertheless the decision ultimately boils down to you. And then the Fawn in that movie, one of the all-time great movie monster effects, great performance from Doug Jones there, is a great devil figure, because he is on the one hand a teacher and a guide, and he's mysterious and alluring, but he's also sinister and strange, and you're not 100% sure if you should trust him, and he ends up, it's kind of like a Socratic trial by fire, where this teacher sort of thrusts you into these terrible situations where you have to come up with the answers for yourself. Probably not a great way to teach Satanism in real life, but great way to do it in a movie.
Clearly I need to revisit that movie, because I definitely think I did not get everything out of it that I could have when I saw it when it first came out. But that these are great answers. I love these answers, because you all kind of came at it from very different perspectives, and cumulatively I think that they shed some light on actual modern Satanism. So that's really great. That's awesome. All right, let's get into this movie review, because as much as I could sit here and just interview you, don't tempt me, because you guys are fascinating. I also value your time. So, all right, before we do that though, Ariel, can you please let any new listeners know what our spoiler policy is here?
Of course. So first of all, Rachel's going to tell you about the director and the making of this movie. And then we're going to give you our non-spoiler sort of overall general thoughts about whether this movie is worth checking out. And then everything after that is up for grabs. And we're going to talk about the whole thing, all the twists, the ending. So if that's something that would bother you, this movie is on Shudder. You can go check it out and then come back and finish listening to the episode. Otherwise, just stick with us.
All right, so let me tell you a little bit about our girl, Chelsea Stardust. So she grew up on a rural farm in Northeast Ohio, but it was not your standard farm with cows, chickens, pigs, whatever it is that you envision to be a farm. Nope, it was a farm that housed 25 sled dogs.
What?
Her father raced sled dogs, and so did she until she was 16.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yep. In addition to that, both of her parents were artists. Her mother was a sculptor and her father was a painter. And so art was very present in the home growing up, including, of course, movies, specifically horror movies. When she was about 10, her father introduced her to George Romero's Night of the Living Dead and Todd Browning's Dracula. And pretty much from then on, she knew she wanted to direct films, specifically horror films. So right away, she started attending night classes at the Cleveland Institute of Art, where she assisted filmmaker Robert Banks Jr. in shooting Super 8 experimental horror. And he was one that actually introduced her to a more grittier side of horror with things like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Hills Have Eyes, God Told Me To. And it just sort of blew her mind. And so as soon as she graduated from film school, she relocated to LA, where she started working for first Ivan Reitman and then Judd Apatow. Then yeah, so she was doing a lot of stuff in the comedy space, but then she decided, like, nah, this is not for me. I really, my heart is in horror. So then the opportunity came up for her to become Jason Blum of Blumhouse's personal assistant. And so she jumped at it, got the job. I'm sure you've heard the little anecdote about his terrible.
Yes.
His, like, there's no women who want to make horror films when his at that moment assistant was a woman who wanted to make horror films, but
that makes it so much worse.
It's real bad. Okay. But eventually she did that for like 4 years, and with Blum's blessing, she moved on to directing full time. Her first feature film was actually for Blumhouse, and that was All That We Destroy, which is one of the entries into the Into the Dark anthology. Do you remember this one, Ariel?
I'm so bad with the titles of those films.
Worries. I wrote it down, so we're good. It's the one about the geneticist and the serial killer.
Oh, I don't think I've ever seen that one.
Oh, it's a good one.
That sounds like
it's
an interesting premise.
It is. It's pretty Black Mirror-y. I would recommend checking it out. It's on Hulu, so it's easy access. Okay. She also directed a horror musical comedy for the stage entitled Slashed, the musical, for the 2017 Hollywood Fringe Festival, and it was nominated for Best Musical and Screamiest Show and won an Encore Award.
Oh, wow. I feel like that's a hard line to walk, doing a horror comedy that also has singing in it. That's tricky.
Yeah. Well, we all know how I feel about musicals. So.
Yeah. Yes, I
do. Do tell. I need to know what side we're on here.
I'm not a big
anti.
Okay, I'm with you.
Yes, my
Daniel and Tabitha. It's 2 against 1. I always have that disclaimer of like, I don't want musicals to not exist. If you like it, that's fine.
Yeah.
Enjoy yourself. I like shit that other people don't like. It's just that I just don't like musicals. I've got a couple of exceptions. The Buffy episode that was a musical.
Once More with Feeling. That one slaps.
The show Gallivant. And I would not be a proper goth person if I didn't like Rocky Horror Picture Show.
That is true. Yeah.
No,
I mean,
I'm with you on the general.
They're just
stance,
so sincere. I don't know if I'm just too cynical, but I can't. I'm just like, ooh, cringe when they start singing.
Out there's a world outside of the Yonkers. Outside of this hick town, Barnaby. Yes.
We have a new exception.
At least back off of the mic if you're going to sing.
Lean in, Daniel, lean in.
That's fair.
Give me all them decibels. I can take it. Amazing. Okay. So as for what she's up to next, actually, I couldn't find anything concrete. She did say in 2019 that she is attached to 2 projects by the writers of All That We Destroy. And at the time, they were waiting to see if they would be greenlit. I mean, I'm sure, no doubt she's up to something, but, and we'll cover it obviously whenever she does. But sadly, I don't have anything definitive. All right. Production information. And I'm curious what you guys are going to think about some of this. All right. But I'll go.
Okay.
All right. So Satanic Panic was first announced in 2015, but with a different director, Ted Gagan, who wrote the story for this, though the screenwriter was actually Grady Hendrix, who may sound familiar because he is the author of the Final Girls support group.
Yeah.
And My Best Friend's Exorcism. Yeah, that makes sense. I haven't seen this movie. Okay.
Yeah. I have some opinions on that, as I've read the Final Girl support group. I was so into the premise. I really liked the idea. Did not like the execution.
Oh, thank God.
Did not like
Neither
it at all.
did we.
On the right side of history again.
And so I've seen Satanic Panic twice now, once during the stream that we had for the Black Mass Appeal Patreon supporters, and then just to refresh for this show. So I had not read Final Girl support group during the stream. Was it even out yet? I'm not sure. But I've read it, and then now watching it, as a refresher for this show, it was the first time I noticed, it's Grady Hendrix. And it's like, it's the same way I feel about musicals. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you exist. There are people who love you. It's just not for me. Just not for me. Like, I might even read another one of the books, because Horror Store has like a really great premise. All of these have really great premises. Just am not super into the execution. So that might be a bit of a preview on how I feel about the movie.
Yeah. We have a friend who loves Grady Hendrix, and I just get very quiet when the subject comes up. Which should be a giveaway because I never shut up. But
that's true.
Hey.
I love it. It's fine.
Okay. So production halted on that for whatever reason. Production hell comes up. They went off and did Mohawk together. And then in 2018, when it was announced that it was back in production, this time now with Chelsea Stardust directing it. And according to Stardust, Fangoria was specifically looking for a woman director for this film. In fact, she says most of the department heads on this film were women.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So in 2018, the film was shot in Dallas, Texas over the course of 18 days. The film did the 2019 festival circuit and was released on DVD and Blu-ray on October 22nd, 2019. One interesting fact is that when it came out on DVD, Walmart sold it, but they made a little alteration to the slipcover. Can you guess what they did?
Oh, I've got an idea.
They removed Satanic. So it's just called Panic. You find it in Walmart.
They didn't even replace it with a different word?
Yeah, that's going to confuse a lot of Panic at the Disco fans. They're going to be like, oh, it's a concert video. No, wait, it is not.
What's weird is they left the pentagram on it, but it just says Panic.
Yeah, that's so weird. I thought they were going to remove that background part of the pentagram.
I mean, they could have at least called it like, say, like satin.
I would also watch that movie. Okay, so the film is currently available to stream on Shudder, as Ariel said. So if you haven't checked it out, it's easy to get your hands on. All right, so there's actually a little controversy that surrounds this movie. Are you guys familiar with that?
No.
All right, so this has a connection to Cinestate, which at the time owned Fangoria. And there was an incident that took place on set that has become a little bit of a problem. So, so there was an expose published by the Daily Beast in June 2020 entitled How a Right-Wing Movie Studio Enabled the Harvey Weinstein of Indie Film.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys read this when it came out. I know it's long and I read every word. It was very interesting and illuminating about what was going down at Cinestate, particularly with this producer, Adam Donaghy. This came out as a result of him being accused of rape of a minor. He was a producer on set, and that's where he met her. It was sort of revealed that there had been a long time whisper campaign about him because he was a serial sexual harasser. In fact, there is audio of him sexually harassing someone that was widely circulated for years. And the CEO of Cinestate refused to listen to it, essentially.
Of course.
Yeah. There was also some issues with a few other productions, like on the set of VFW. This is a long, complex issue, but there was an incident that also took place on the set of Satanic Panic. So I'm just going to read you the section from this article. This is, like I said, from the Daily Beast. 2 crew members on Satanic Panic also alleged that the actress Ruby Modine, daughter of Matthew, was pressured by Donaghy into performing a sex scene with an obsessed fanboy. The guy that they cast didn't show up. Ruby Modine confessed to me that the PA that picked her up in front of the airport was saying, "Oh my gosh, my roommate was so in love with you, and we're really excited that you're here." It ended up being that was the guy they replaced this character with, was that fan. She was forced to do a sex scene with a guy who was a fan of hers. A crew member tells the Daily Beast she protested it to myself, to Amanda, and to Adam. I told them that she didn't feel comfortable with it and they needed to talk to her about it. And Adam said, "I don't care what she says. We're going to shoot our movie," and walked out of the room. It rubbed me the wrong way, the crew member adds. She ended up doing the scene with the guy who was a fan of hers, who could have been pleasurized by the scene. It was wrong and obscene. Modine declined to comment. Donaghy could not be reached for comment. Presmic, I don't know who that is, while acknowledging the hire, says it has never been expressed to me directly that there was any particular discomfort with the scene. Satanic Panic director Chelsea Stardust alleges that she was completely unaware of Adam's behavior and the history until a few weeks ago, and that no one was involved with the production expressed any concern to me about Adam's involvement. The scene remains in the film. So it's obviously the opening scene. That guy that, is in the bedroom with her, that's the super fan.
Oh.
I was going to say, thinking back to the movie, I don't remember. I was going to say that had to be the scene they're talking about, a scene which is very brief and could very easily not have been in the movie at all. Maybe they intended it for it to be longer or earlier. I have no idea, but you could have lost that and not really detracted from the film at all. Not that that's the important thing, but nevertheless, it is hard to overlook in light of all of that.
I mean, I think it is important because, like you said, it was an unnecessary scene that they could have excised without compromising the film, and they chose that over.
Right. They chose not to listen to her complaints that this was not okay with her, and instead went ahead and filmed a scene that you absolutely do not need in the movie.
Yeah. So after the arrest, basically it led kind of to the collapse of Cinestate. Fandango insisted that they be sold off or released from whatever situation they had, and they ended up closing it. However, there is a successor to the company. Bonfire Legend was launched by them in early 2021 to carry on the company's mission of the Rebeller media label in partnership with the Daily Wire.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, they learned their lesson. Yeah.
I hate all of this. This is awful.
Yep. And it kind of sucks because if it's true that, Chelsea didn't know anything about this, it sucks that this will forever be linked with her film. And it really, really sucks for Ruby Modine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on that cheery note, let's get into our review.
Not to change the topic radically, but since we did touch on it a little bit with the Walmart thing, I am curious, what do people think about this title, Satanic Panic? Because if you are, say, a Satanist or somebody who listens to Black Mass Appeal, you associate that phrase with the anti-Satanism scare of the 80s and early 90s. And when I heard this movie was announced, and before we watched it the first time, I was in my mind comparing it to, say, Ty West's House of the Devil, the 2009 movie. Ty West, the current director of the movie X, which is in theaters right now, and I gather is I think is a bit of a hit, so good for him. And
very good.
He made House of the Devil because he said essentially he grew up during that Satanic Panic period, always hearing these stories about the evil satanic rituals that were secretly going on in small town America. But of course, every time he pushed on those stories a little bit, the rumors always fell apart. It never turned out to be true. Imagine that. So he made a movie about essentially, well, what if it was true? What would that look like? And I actually like House of the Devil quite a bit. We talked about that on an episode we did, I think, in 2020 of BMA, but the actual citation is eluding me. I'll have to go back and look at that one. So walking into this movie, I was expecting something kind of like that, and I guess we do get something kind of like that, but that's where the similarities between those films end. So what, if anything, were people expecting from the title relative to what we got, and do we actually think this is a good title for this movie at all?
I mean,
I think it's misleading.
Yeah. But I was definitely intrigued by it because I'm also of the right age where I remember the Satanic Panic. And so it has, and as a little horror nerd as a kid, I wanted it to be real. So anything about it I thought was interesting. So yeah, I feel like we'll talk about this when we get into our feelings about the movie, but I think I was misled a little bit, like you said, about and that maybe didn't do the film service. What about you, Tabitha and Simone?
Right there with you. Once again, I think I saw the poster first. So I got the title and then like kind of some of the imagery, smack at the same time. And it immediately did not match to me because Satanic Panic it was a real thing. It has a very distinct, place and time in American history. It's got a very distinct aesthetic unto itself. And none of it matched. And I get what they're trying to do. I get that they're trying to, take this phrase that is popular and commonly associated with Satan or Satanism and just kind of make the most out of that. I mean,
yeah,
we named our show Black Mass Appeal. I understand. So I just feel like they could have picked something better, something more modern, because this is a very modern take on this kind of story. And so I'm just thinking like, oh, you could have played up some sort of like fucking like, I don't know, Illuminati shit, or
that's true.
Even made fun of real boring Satanists. Actually there's a line in the movie where the main character says, I know a real Satanist and he's a vegan. That's accurate. That's closer. But there wasn't enough of that to kind of justify the juxtaposition for me.
That's another thing is, again, comparing it to House of the Devil, a movie that actually was a period film set in the 80s. And for once, that was actually not indulgent just to do 80s nostalgia. That was actually appropriate to that theme. Here you've got this movie that's set in a contemporary setting, which is fine. But like, guys, you're doing a movie about a secret satanic cult set in the 21st century, and the main character is a pizza delivery person, and you don't do a Pizzagate joke? What is going on?
Oh my gosh, it's right there. And
missed opportunities. Actually, I take that back. The logo for the pizza place is maybe a joke about that, which is actually kind of funny.
What is the logo? I don't remember.
It's a slice of pizza with an eye at the top, like the all-seeing eye on the pyramid.
Very nice.
I didn't even
watch that shirt.
But again, look, we all saw the movie, and did anybody else besides me notice that? So obviously they did not make enough out of that. So, Tabitha, what do you think, title-wise?
I mean, like, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. We're like, well, it was satanic, and the main character was panicking during the
Quite
film.
a bit.
I love this literal read.
I'm trying really hard here.
Yeah.
The same thing, like, I actually saw the poster too, and was under the impression that this was going to be some kind of 80s movie, but they were just not projecting it very well with the title. Like, I was like, oh, fun. This is going to be kind of a fun little 80s romp or something. And then I was like, well, I don't know. This doesn't quite really look like that. I gotta say, though, because I am a person who watches extremely bad horror movies, I have very, very low expectations for things. And people like to name their movies all sorts of fun garbage.
Can we come up with an alternate, more accurate title for this? I was gonna go the 666%.
Oh,
ooh, that's good.
That's kind of
That's
clever.
a lot closer,
like
to what
I
it
love
actually
that.
was.
All right, well then I'll take it. Awesome. Okay, so let's get into our feelings about this. Tabitha, why don't you go first? What did you think of this movie?
It's really interesting. The first time we watched this with the stream and everything, I had a really good time. It was fun. I don't know if it was just because I was with a group, or like, I do like movies that are a little tongue in cheek as well. I think that's a lot of fun to experience that, especially in a group. But, Daniel and I, well, actually, I assume Simone did as well, watched it again to kind of refresh ourselves with it. And I just didn't have as much fun with it this time. There's still a couple of jokes in it that I thought were really funny, but like, I don't know, maybe I was paying a lot more like a lot closer attention to it this time, and it just didn't make a lot of sense. I don't know. I still didn't hate it or anything. I don't want to express some really, heavy emotions on this kind of fluffy little movie, but like, I don't know. I didn't have as much fun.
Oh, that's a bummer. How about you, Simone?
So my feelings on this movie is I see what they were trying to do. I see the intent. I see what they were trying to do. And just like I feel about Grady Hendrix's written work, but it didn't execute for me. And, that's not like, horror comedy is a very hard needle to thread. Because you are sacrificing kind of one sort of tension, which undercuts the horror tension. But I've seen it done well. Like there's this, I believe, New Zealand movie called Housebound.
I love that movie.
Fucking hysterical.
Yes.
And yet they're like scares at the end that legit had me jumping. And so this movie like should have leaned harder into being comedy. And don't get me wrong, like they really went there with the wacky characters and the kind of over the top tropes. But there weren't jokes or good jokes anyway.
Yeah.
And there was nothing that was actually scary. Like you got to give me some kind of horror tension or suspense or, like give me a jump scare. Give me like an actual jump scare. Didn't deliver. So
yeah, it was just kind of gross. There was definitely like gross parts.
And again, I understand like watching a schlocky gore blood fest is fun in its own right. But again, I think they're trying to sort of do too much. And I see the intent. I see the tropes that they're trying to like, play off of, but it just didn't hold together for me.
That's fair.
Well, I think I like this movie a little bit more than both of my co-hosts, although neither of them are wrong about the criticism that they just said. I think maybe there's a few things that I appreciated about this. Like Simone says, there's not really a lot of jokes, which is true, but there is some stuff in here that's funny in an ironical way. For example, almost anything Rebecca Romaine says or does is hysterical just in how much she is enjoying the sardonic black wit of this. There's a scene in here where she's seducing this idiot who's just completely oblivious, and I could watch that all day. That's just good fun. Is there a ha-ha gag in there? Not really, but it's definitely entertaining. I think there's some practical effects in here that, considering I think this is a relatively low budget film, they did a great job with. I think most of the cast is excellent. I think in terms of the tone thing that Simone was talking about, here's what I said after we finished watching it again for the second time last night is I think it's okay if you do a horror comedy and you make it absurd. And I also think it's okay if you do a horror comedy and you play it more serious. But I feel like trying to do both of those without a really strong directorial vision mixes things up a little bit. There are scenes in this movie that are completely off the wall, and then there are scenes in this movie that we're supposed to take gravely seriously, and there's just not a lot of it doesn't navigate that spectrum very adroitly. I guess two movies I would compare this unfavorably to would be, if you want a horror comedy that takes itself seriously while still being kind of ridiculous, watch We Summon the Darkness, another great Satanic Panic period film that I think this movie kind of wanted to be like, although We Summon the Darkness came afterwards, but I feel like that was the tone this movie was maybe aiming for. And then also the Netflix movie The Babysitter, which is a ridiculous, goofy ass horror comedy.
That's a fun one.
That is not, I like less than, say, We Summon the Darkness, but that's a movie that definitely knows what it's doing. That is not a movie that has to second guess itself or has to or undermines itself at any point. That is a movie that is like picked an idea and went full steam ahead and fuck the consequences. And this movie, I feel, tries to do that, but I think it just gets a little bit hung up on itself.
Yeah.
Also, I have some notes for the filmmakers. Not that they asked. Maybe we don't need to talk about them right now. Maybe this can wait. But I definitely want to talk about at least a few of them.
Okay, well, we're going to get into spoilers soon where you can get into actual plot beats, which I'm guessing maybe that touches on, because I want to hear all the notes.
Yeah, me too.
Awesome. All right, well, how about you, Ariel? What did you think of this? Was this a first watch for you?
Yeah, this was a first watch for me. I had no idea what this movie was about, so I agree that the title sort of misled me a little bit, but I do think maybe I liked it a little more than some people here. It's fun and goofy and kind of dumb, but I was entertained through most of the runtime. There's ridiculous over-the-top gore and some, funny moments. And I love that Rebecca Romaine is just chewing up the scenery and seems to be really loving what she's doing. I like that, we've got women here who are powerful and kind of power hungry and greedy. I think that's interesting. And I think that Sam and Judy are fun together. They have kind of good chemistry. And honestly, we've done some darker movies recently, both on this podcast and the Zombie Girls, and having something light was kind of refreshing. Rachel and I just finished watching Hagazusa, for instance.
Oh, God.
After watching that, this was kind of a breath of fresh air, even if it's not perfect. I agree that there are some plot beats that don't really work. I'll get into that in cons, especially I think the beginning and the end are kind of imperfect, but there's also just some really fun, ridiculous stuff in this movie that I actually did enjoy.
Oh, good. Yeah, this was a second watch for me, and I think I enjoyed it more the second time because I had recalibrated my expectations somewhat.
Smart.
I was expecting a different movie the first time I watched it, and so I let myself down a little bit, and I found quite a bit more to enjoy about it this time. I think, well, it's not necessarily laugh out loud funny. I think it's an amusing movie.
Yeah.
I would say it's a horror amusing. And we've talked, we all agree that Rebecca Romaine is chewing up the scenery and is fantastic and just having the best time ever. But I also think that Arden Mirren, who plays Gypsy and is an actor I always really enjoy, is pretty fun in this too. It's sort of the foil for her. I always enjoy her sort of manic energy. And when she brings it in, it's like extra evil. I thought that was a lot of fun. Their dynamic entertained me. There are definitely some jokes here that do not land. Like the Kildo, for instance, which one we can talk more about is not great. But I do appreciate the running joke of the disdain for corn on pizza, because seriously, that's gross. Who's getting corn on pizza?
I agree. That's terrible.
Yeah. I think that this thing kind of kicks both up and down, and that it doesn't really have a direction robs some of the joy for me. I always like something to kick up. Especially when it's about the 1%. And I wonder if that's like a Cinestate issue. I don't know. But it did kind of detract for me a little bit. But what drew me back was I like the creature effects and I liked the gore. And I think, like you said, if you have been watching nothing but, meditations on grief through a horror lens, which we do a lot of and I love, but sometimes you do need that palate cleanser, and this one was, if you're just looking for something light and dumb and fun and bloody, I do think that there is something to be had here. So put it on Shudder, stick it in the old prefrontal cortex and see how you do with it.
Yeah, so if you like movies where all the men are schlubs.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
I hadn't thought about that. That's a great point. By the way, none of us mentioned Jerry O'Connell, by the way, who is who is speaking of having way too good of a time.
Yeah, I think we'll have to get into that, because that is a real mixed bag of a scene. It starts on a real high and ends on a real low.
Yeah, it does.
All right, speaking of spoilers, let's enter the spoiler zone. So this is me vamping and giving people time to grab their phones or whatever device they are listening. They are allowing our voices to enter their brain through, whether it's your microwave, your radio, your Zune. Come on, be realistic. Microwave, fine, but Zune.
The metal fillings in your teeth.
Right.
Don't tell them that we got that technology through the 5G from your vaccine. However it is that you're getting this
ham
broadcast. There you go.
I mean, ham sandwich.
I'm hungry. Okay, so I think we've given people enough time. Ariel, go ahead and drop that synopsis on us.
All right, so Sam is our main character, and she is broke, so she gets a job delivering pizzas. And her first day goes terribly because everyone's a weirdo and no one's tipping her. At the end of the night, she goes to deliver pizzas to a giant mansion, but the rich dude doesn't tip her either. So when she goes to leave, her Vespa runs out of gas, and she sneaks inside the mansion to ask for a tip, but instead stumbles upon a group of Satanists who are getting ready to summon Baphomet. They need a virgin for the ceremony, and it turns out the young woman they picked isn't exactly a virgin anymore. So they drug Sam and lock her in a room with, like you said, Jerry O'Connell, who tries to save her by attempting to force her to have sex with him. But all is well because he accidentally shoots himself right away.
That is kind of actually awesome.
Sam manages to get away and runs to a neighbor's house to call the police, but they try to drug her. And then one of them attacks her with a giant drill strap-on, or as Rachel said, a kildo. And no, that's not a euphemism. It actually happened. But the one wielding the strap-on accidentally kills her own sister, and then the drill goes into the wiring in the wall, and she electrocutes herself too. They both die. Before leaving, Sam finds a young woman named Judy bound and gagged in one of the bedrooms. When she unties her, she realizes that she's the daughter of the cult leader Danica, played by Rebecca Romijn. Judy was supposed to have already been killed, so now the cult has to hunt down both young women who team up to try to escape. Despite their best efforts, Sam and Judy are captured and the ritual begins. Sam is impregnated by Baphomet. Judy is murdered by her mom. Sam gives birth to 2 bunnies. Something went wrong with the ritual, and Sam wakes up fully dressed with the cult gone, and in their place is a powerful demon named Samaziel in the body of a very young girl who plans to kill her. But Sam cons her way out of it, and the demon lets her go, and she rides off into the sunset, sort of, with a bunny in her jacket. That's it.
There you go. All right. Now that all restraints have been lifted, Daniel, I hear you have notes.
Yeah, let's hear them.
I do. Do we want to get into this now, or do we want to?
I mean, I don't know what's on that. You tell me.
Notes.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
The people have spoken, and this is a democracy.
In fact, maybe we should get this out of the way, because maybe there are listeners who are like, oh, we've got real Satanists here talking about the Satanism movie for once. Are they going to talk about the authenticity of the film? Which, for the most part, no, because for the most part, there isn't any. However,
I thought you were going to say it was 10 out of 10. Okay.
However, we could go on about that kind of thing, especially me. Let me give you an example of what it's like watching movies with me, especially so what it's like to be Tabitha, who's very nice to put up with me. We were watching this pretty mediocre 2017 movie called Stillborn the other day. It's not bad, but it's nothing to write home about. There is a point in this movie where I actually said the following sentence: lady, if you're worried about this Mesopotamian demon haunting you, keeping all this Lamashtu imagery around isn't helping anything. Just get yourself a Pazuzu and call it a day.
Pazuzu.
That's a real sentence that came out of my mouth, and I promise it makes sense.
I love him very much.
Oh, that was great. I love it.
So do I have anything to say about that for this movie? Well, not really, because most of the stuff in this movie is just sort of made up Hollywood nonsense. Like, they talk about all of the mythology about Baphomet. There actually isn't a lot of mythology about Baphomet, and most of what it is weird nonsense. In fact, we did an episode about this just a couple of weeks ago. History of Baphomet number 114. Check that out. They talk about the 11 princes of hell in Samazel, and like that's just made up. There is no demon prince named Samazel that I've ever heard of in any demonology, although that name is kind of similar to names like Samael and Azazel. Anyway, the point is, if they wanted to do a real, quote unquote, real demon prince's name, they could have. Obviously they didn't. That's fine. I don't demand that people care about these sorts of things. However, there are, again, I got a couple of notes.
Okay. Lay them on us.
One, so they're having this ritual on Beltane, and I'm sitting the whole time wondering why Beltane instead of Walpurgis Night, which is the previous evening, if anybody's not up on your pagan European calendar.
I know these are words. I know you're speaking words.
And I asked this question out loud to Tabitha, and then a minute later, I'm like, I'm an idiot. It's just easier to say. That's the only reason. I'm positive that's the only reason they picked one of them as the other. I am very interested. So this idea of like ritual human sacrifice, which is the oldest trick in the book for your satanic cult movie. And
that old chestnut.
yes. Yes, exactly. And in fact, if you want to know more about why people obsess over that idea, even though there is no history of ritual human sacrifice in any satanic religion, I would actually recommend the 2006 book by delicious-sounding theologian David Frankfurter titled Evil Incarnates. Or you can just email me and I'll tell you all about this book because I haven't shut up about it since I read it last year. But he dives into the historical and sociological reasons why we have these sort of cross-cultural fears of evil people committing these ritual depredation acts, which on the one hand horrify us, but we also seem kind of obsessed with.
Yeah.
And so, but here, I'm actually going to reference a completely different book here, which is also a book called Satanic Panic by sociologist Jeffrey Victor. And here is, I remember, so this is a book about, again, the actual Satanic Panic, the actual anti-Satanism scare. And here's a couple of quotes that just stood out to me while I was watching this film. Again, here's from page 24, quote, "There are widespread rumors about various kinds of satanic cult activity, often alleged to be planning to kidnap and sacrifice blonde, blue-eyed children in satanic rituals."
Oh, jeez.
Here's from page 47. "Rumor stories abound about ritual meetings, the killings of cats, dogs, and other animals, the drinking of blood, and the predicted imminent kidnapping and sacrifice of a blonde, blue-eyed virgin." Here we go from page 43. Here's recounting an actual scare in Jamestown, New York in the early 80s. Marcy was a psychology major at Jamestown Community College and seemed to be a very rational and reasonable person.
Oh, God.
She also happened to be blonde, blue-eyed 19-year-old. On the morning of Friday the 13th, Marcy overheard people at her office where she worked discussing the rumors that, quote, the cult was planning to kidnap and sacrifice a blonde, blue-eyed virgin. Her initial reaction was one of skeptical amusement. But later that day at home, her mother repeated the rumor story, angry that dangerous criminals could be on the loose in their community. The story no longer seemed so silly to Marcy, and she began to seek more information and calling some of her friends, and they too had heard the story about the cult and their imminent sacrifice. And so later in the book, I don't have the page number for this one, excuse me, Victor notes, why these kidnapping stories that feature blonde, blue-eyed virgins rather than, for example, a dark-haired, dark-eyed victim or a sexually promiscuous girl? The answer lies, apologies in advance, by the way, the answer lies in the symbolism of the blonde-haired virgin, which since ancient times in many European cultures has been held up as a symbol of innocence and purity. It is found in folklore, stories, and in folk ballads. At a deeper level, the blonde virgin is a symbol for people's cherished ideals. And so the rumor panic metaphor bespeaks this collective complaint. Our most cherished values are in danger from a mysterious force of evil. So the lead here, Haley Griffith, I cannot help but notice, is blonde and has blue eyes. And as the movie repeats over and over again, her character is a virgin, and this is critical to the sacrifice. And she is not depicted as a child, but although she does have some perhaps childlike, girlish tendencies throughout the film. And I strongly suspect that this movie were made 30 or 40 years ago, they probably would have made her a teenager instead of a 20-something, just to get a little bit closer to that rumor panic reality. And so I don't know if this is something the filmmakers did on purpose. There could be any number of reasons why they cast Haley Griffith in this movie, including maybe just that she's pretty good in it. But nevertheless, that kind of stood out in my memory. I remembered reading those passages about the strange racist overtones of blonde-haired, blue-eyed, virginal, the weird misogynistic. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like I don't know whether playing into that stereotype of this movie means anything, but I feel like at least warrants a discussion. I also wanted to bring up one last thing, and this is a note that I would definitely have passed on to the filmmakers if they'd have asked, which why would they? But the repeated chanting in the film of death to the weak, wealth to the strong. Now, that actually is a quotation from old Anton LaVey's Satanic Bible, which I assume is why they put it in the movie. However, what I would guess the filmmakers did not know is that LaVey stole that phrase, along with significant other chunks of that exact same chapter of the Satanic Bible, from an older book from the 1890s called Might is Right, written by a man named Ragnar Redbeard, actual real name Arthur Desmond, and Might is Right is in fact a rambling, rabid anti-Semitic tract.
Oh,
Yikes.
Why did Anton LaVey steal from that book of all? Well, he was also kind of a fascist, although he was careful to clip the anti-Semitic parts out of the quotations that he lifted wholesale from that. So what we actually have
Well,
here,
that makes it better.
wittingly or not, is
no.
that dozens of characters in this movie are chanting what is essentially anti-Semitic propaganda.
Somebody tweet Grady Hendrix and let him know.
Yeah,
Now,
really.
they are the bad guys, and in fact, they
Yeah.
are I think, universally white, wealthy, yuppie, upper class group. So this is not necessarily inappropriate, but at the same time, I would guess they didn't know this, and they might have thought twice about it if anyone had told them. And
Yeah.
so,
Because if they had known that, it seems like it would be maybe part of the plot, and it's not brought up at all.
Also, it's coming out of the mouths of the arguably most compelling characters in the movie.
That's
yeah.
true.
So those are the only insider notes we got for you, other than the fact that Tabitha and I noticed they used the big-headed Baphomet during the cursing scene. Just wanted to put that out there.
Oh, okay.
I gotta say, actually, piggybacking off of that,
Please.
because of just how much I look up satanic items online to maybe buy, maybe not. There's so much costuming pieces and set pieces and stuff. I'm like, you can get that on Amazon. I'm like, oh, that one you can get at this place. Oh,
Really?
They went for the cheap one. Oh, okay.
Are any of them her headpiece in the ritual? Because
That
I
kind of
was
looks
pretty into
homemade.
that.
I could not, that one, no. But like the entire outfit that the girls are wearing, I know where you can get all of that shit.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah,
It's
the
Amazon.
pentagram bra strappy thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I have the black version of like the pentagram chest.
That was pretty cute.
Nice. Nice. I like it. I like it.
We don't have the giant flaming metal pentagram hula hoop, though. We could use one of those.
It's so bad.
You guys, I'm sorry, but you need that. Like,
Yeah.
do we need to start like a Patreon or something specifically for the we need? Yeah, that you guys need
Yes.
it.
We need
We have
that,
a-
and
we
we
have
need
a-
a gong.
That's exactly it. I was going to say we have a couple pieces that we are looking to acquire. A gong is one of them. I've priced it out, and really, it's just a matter of storage. I can't imagine that a hula hooped sized pentagram would be any easier to fit in my closet. So, shelving that dream for now.
I mean, does it have to get put away, or could it be part of the decor?
I got a mother-in-law. I got a sort of
gotcha.
mother-in-law who is better off not knowing. Just put it that way.
Got it.
Fair.
Got it. Fair.
But anyway,
Awesome.
Anyway, the point is, like, is the question of how does this compare to real Satanism? Well, obviously it doesn't. This is like a mostly silly, tongue-in-cheek pastiche of Hollywood Satanism stuff from other movies. Even the few things they that are actually authentic, that is again something that a lot of movies about devil worshipping cults and exploitative films and B films will do. They will take a little of the real stuff and sprinkle it in there out of context. Like that's actually perfectly normal. And so, like I said, that doesn't usually bother us that much,
Right.
because like we like these movies. We think they're a lot of fun. Again, this one is kind of a mixed bag, but and in fact, to be completely honest, sometimes if we see something in a movie that's really good, it's like, yeah, we'll steal that. That's fine. I will say, I anticipate a time, probably within 10 years, but certainly within 20, when I feel younger generations of Satanists who are raised in an environment where they expect where they feel more comfortable expressing themselves religiously, are going to start to expect and maybe even demand more authentic and responsible representations of real satanic religion in media. And they're probably going to get really mad at people like me for defending movies like this, which they are going to say, perpetuate these horrible, negative urban myths.
Sure.
And, they're not wrong. They do. But
Yeah.
there's a, I'm not sure I can articulate what the why the charm persists despite that, but it does.
Because we don't take ourselves that seriously.
Yeah.
Because if we did, then well,
I mean, you're natural contrarians as well, right? Yeah, that makes sense. I will say there were moments in this where I was like, I wonder if this is offensive. And then I was like, oh, but they picked it, so it's fine. They can be mad at me for the selection.
Actually, the things that are most likely to bother us about this movie are probably the things that are most likely to bother a general general audience, which is that it does deal with themes about sexual violence and domestic abuse, and it's frankly not necessarily as deft about those things as it should be.
Yeah,
And-
that's an understatement.
And one of the
Again, may I
main
present the kildo?
yeah, and one of the main characters' name is a slur for the Romani people. I'm just like,
Yeah.
you should know
Oh,
better by
Very
now.
true.
Yeah, I forgot about
Yeah.
that. Fuck.
Yeah. I was like, is this still Goshen 2022? I don't think so. Awesome. Okay, so now that the spoiler lift has been lifted, are there any themes or moments or sort of thoughts about the movie that you couldn't talk about that were more like, plot beat specific?
Well, first, I would like to kind of go back to something that Daniel said,
Great.
or that was sort of discussed a little bit before, is that it's this movie, when we're talking about like accuracy and whether or not we're going to be sticklers about it as actual Satanists, the answer is like no, because who is watching this movie and thinking it's any kind of accurate?
Right. It's so over the top and ridiculous. I feel like it would be a stretch for anyone to think that it was based on realistic things.
I mean, like, I think we have a slightly different perspective because we can pick out the things that are real.
Yeah,
which are like
Mhm.
the little nuggets that maybe the general audience wouldn't get. Like, at one point, Rebecca Romaine calls Baphomet the Lord of the Templars. Not exactly Lord of the Templars, but very strong association with the history of the Templars. So I'm like, oh, okay, that's true. But it doesn't matter. Like, everything else is so ridiculous that no one's going to come to a Satanic Bay Area meeting and start wondering why Baphomet does not have 3 faces. This is not one of the princes of hell. So it doesn't bother me. Although I will kind of say, so like, I do feel like you should either go one way or the other with kind of faking Satanism. Like, you should maybe have gone over the top even more, or tried to ground it a little bit better. Because thinking about Hereditary, spoilers for that movie.
Great movie.
But the ending refers to this, demon Paimon, and that's a real, not real, but that is a mythological character that's in a well-known, book of demons. And Ari Aster just said basically like he just picked it sort of randomly because he can't use Satan every time. He's the big guy. It's obvious he's too busy. He can't be here for every single Black Mass. So let's go with a lesser demon, more quote unquote realistic. And so I was actually kind of like, oh, he picked like something from the Key of Solomon, and that's kind of interesting. I wonder like why. And then the answer was just, oh, I just picked it randomly. Then I was sort of disappointed because I'm like, oh, I thought you did research. It's fine.
That's such an interesting perspective because I never would have known that.
Yeah. And so going back to the actual question of this section, talking about different plot points, mine's more of like kind of character beats where the way that they're trying to portray this pizza girl was so like, again, what I said before, I could see what they're trying to do, but I don't think they did it very well. Right. So she's so innocent, so sweet, so innocent, makes faces at sex jokes and stuff. And she, when she's stressed out, she thinks about fuzzy bunnies, and she sings a little song on her acoustic guitar about kangaroos and koala bears romping through Australia. It reminds her of her old boyfriend, whatever. And it's like they could have made it even more cheesy and obvious. And then there's a part where she's describing to Ruby Modine's character like her life, and she had cancer, and her boyfriend had cancer. They met in like the clinic or whatever, and I was fully expecting like Ruby Modine's character to go, isn't that the plot of The Fault in Our Stars?
That would have been a great joke. That would have been an actual joke.
Exactly. And so it's like they just didn't take things far enough. Yeah. And so it's not so silly that I can get stoned and still giggle at it, but it's not serious or scary in the least.
Yeah, some of that stuff's a little ham-fisted where they're trying to give her this backstory that somehow illuminates her character. But you're right, it's just too saccharine, but it's not over the top enough to be a joke either.
Yeah, you just kind of got to commit.
Yeah.
On that note, on this idea of themes about, our ideas about purity and innocence, and talking about that scene where Jerry O'Connell accidentally kills himself.
Yeah.
That is the start of a theme in this movie in which Sam really directly, if not kills, then is responsible for the deaths of dozens of people, the gruesome demises of almost every other character in this movie you can lay directly at her feet, but never explicitly. It's always in these roundabout ways.
Right.
It's
right.
She's like the Roadrunner in the Wile E. Coyote cartoon, where she just bumps people off by stepping out of the way of the anvil at the last second.
Totally right. Now that I'm mentally going through all the kills, and I'm like, yep.
Yeah,
you
she
are
doesn't
correct.
actively kill anybody. That's true.
I mean, a bumbling woman who has no real agency is kind of a Grady Hendrix stock character.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Even the aforementioned
Very familiar.
scene where Rebecca Romaine kills the idiot pervert is like, he's there because he's keeps sexually harassing Sam and she loses her phone. So even that, she kind of has like an indirect third-hand contribution to getting that guy killed too.
That's true. Yeah.
Note about that actor, that's AJ Bowen, who the very first time I ever saw him was in House of the Devil.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yep.
Oh.
He's the guy, he's like mustachioed in that. And he's the one that comes and knocks on her window. Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
Huh. Daniel just brought up the scene where Jerry O'Connell's character accidentally shoots himself and kills himself. And then Rebecca Romaine comes in and finds the body. And she has to reach in through his neck wound.
Yeah.
It's pretty great.
Puts her whole arm down his neck and pulls out some organ. It's never. I don't
question mark.
recognize it.
I don't know.
I think
I had
it's
my
his
gallbladder out. It
soul.
doesn't look like that. So that's crossed off the list. But that was one of the only times in that movie where I actually was kind of laughing to myself, because that was the kind of over the topness that I was sort of looking for. This woman
Right.
has her whole forearm in his neck, down his throat, pulling out an organ. And then when she does and she's done, she looks at the dead body and she goes, "Thank you." That's hilarious. More of that.
And the moment where she pulls the guy's intestines out through his mouth, that's a great one too. I kind of wish there had been more stuff like that,
Yeah.
Or even the soul souffle, when she opens that platter and it's moving around and she's feeding it blood. That was pretty cool too. It felt very 80s schlocky B movie.
Oh yeah, that was
we're getting into
super
some Dead Alive.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But the movie has a weird tone, because when she does go into that neighbor's house and we get to see the drill dough thing, that is so over the top and so wacky that
It feels like it's in a different movie.
it feels like it's going to be in a different
Yeah.
movie, and that I thought the movie was kind of going to change tone, but then it didn't. It's just sort of a weird standalone piece. It almost felt like they made this thing and then didn't want to kill their darling or something, even though it didn't really
totally
make sense.
agree. It's not that Sam goes over to the house and discovers the two sisters, and then they try and fool her, and then they try and kill her. That is a fit for the rest of the movie. It's just that one of them just randomly walks out with this huge drill dildo, and I'm like, that's not
Who
not
are
the
you?
part- that's not the part that needs to be over the top. That has nothing to do with the rest of the movie. It's nothing to do with the plot, nothing to do with the characters, nothing to do with Satanism even. And so you're picking the wrong things to be over the top. You could have had a super gory kill for the two sisters where Sam bumbles her way into accidentally murdering these two women. But a drill dildo?
It's just so extreme, and it's so huge. It's huge.
I mean, somebody made that prop.
Yeah.
It feels like a little
I feel like the
wasted.
prop came before the scene.
Mhm.
Like that somebody
Absolutely.
made that and they were like, "Oh, we have to figure out a way to put this in the movie."
Yeah.
And then it's kind of glaringly obvious that that's what happened.
I mean, it is kind of the prop equivalent of the hula hoop in your house. You're like, I gotta get this out of the house. Somebody need it for a movie. My mother-in-law's coming.
Look, it really spins.
I mean, have you guys seen a movie called I think it's Apostle. It stars Dan Stevens.
Yeah, that's a great movie.
Oh God, the brain core.
The brain core was really disturbing to me. It really that was such a great visual, such a creative way to like kill people, especially in like an executionary punishment sense. And it fit. It worked because it's a little bit over the top, but you can kind of see these sort of, I forget what time period they're in, like 1800s ish.
Something like that. But yeah, you're right. It's still kind of grounded.
Yeah, constructing it. Like I could see the characters like, shaping the metal and doing the drills and bits and everything. And the kills are super duper gory and disturbing. And meanwhile, it's like just the dildo kildo.
Band name.
They could have gotten there.
If we're comparing this unfavorably to other movies, compare, say, to, speaking of Ari Aster, compare this to, like, the bear suit scene in Midsommar, which is also completely ridiculous and totally bizarre. But in that movie, it seems appropriate, if for no other reason than the fact that you've been spending this entire movie going, I don't know what's going to happen to these people, but I'm positive it's going to be weird and fucking terrible. And so when the penny finally drops, you're like, well, I don't know what I was expecting, but I can't very well complain about it. Here, though, it's a real 180 kind of experience.
Yeah.
And so
it comes out of nowhere.
This movie isn't trying to be Midsommar, obviously, so maybe that comparison's not appropriate, but the comparison there is like, you've got to earn these things, or at the very least, you've got to kind of tip the audience off. Otherwise, you're just going to end up confusing people. Because the fact that all of us had this reaction to this one relatively brief scene tells us maybe something is wrong.
That is a really good segue as far as like, I'd like to talk about the ending of this movie.
Yeah.
Going back to what we were just talking about with Midsommar, is that movie leads up to this extremely bizarre culmination that you are just sitting there like kind of unfortunately having, well, not unfortunately, but like having to drink it in, like having to experience it and be like, why? What is happening right now? Whereas I feel like kind of the very opposite thing happened with this movie, where I was actually really kind of disappointed in the ending, because we're all leading up to this big culmination. And yes, actually, I think the Baphomet, like, the walking around character is kind of interesting looking. Yeah. And then poof, everybody's gone. Yeah. And she's just sitting there in her clothes. And then everybody comes back, but then they die and they all just lay down.
Yeah, it's very
everybody goes, has a little nap, and then the movie's over. And I feel like that would have been a really cool, and like I realized, like, looking at other stuff in the movie, that this thing was filmed over 18 days, and like, I'm sure they didn't have the budget to do this really crazy over the top finale, but I would have really enjoyed just some like sort of just totally knockout crazy ending. Especially since we had all this blood and gore in the rest of the movie. Like, I wanted to see that come to an extreme head at the end. And just have something wild happen. But really, it was just kind of like, they were sleeping, and then Sam left.
Yeah, it really felt like they were building to some kind of crescendo, right? And then it just kind of peters out.
It's a satanic ritual. And like, that's one of my favorite things about watching satanic movies, even if they're totally ridiculous, is actually experiencing the ritual, and what the director or whomever is, the set designer and stuff thinks a satanic ritual is like. I think that's really fun. And at this one, it was like, okay, we have these really cool set pieces, and then people fuck and they lay down. Right.
Yeah, it was like they didn't know what to do with it. They didn't actually know how to end the movie,
Yeah. And I really think I feel like, if we hadn't, for me, if I had a really nice, well-rounded ending, I think I would probably think of it a little more favorably, especially if it was just totally, like, literally insane. Yeah. Because that's what I expected to have happen with this, like, silly movie.
Yeah. Have you guys seen Ready or Not?
I was just about to bring that up.
Brainwave, go for it then, Daniel.
That movie's ending is the ending that we should have gotten here.
Yeah, right.
And
that nails it.
That's another ending that I feel like that's another movie that people kind of slept on, I think, even though like it made some money and people saw it. But that movie, I think it's technically a spoiler to say that it's a Satanism themed movie, because they do kind of try to keep that under wraps a little bit. But like the very first thing you see in that movie is a picture of the devil. It's like opening credits, fade from black, there's the devil. So if you don't put 2 and 2 together by the end, I can't
Is this
help
the
you.
first movie you've ever seen?
And it's such a better payoff for these sort of rich assholes that are trying to control the world.
It's so satisfying.
Yeah.
I forgot how good. Like, I had to look it up. I'm like, what was it? And I was like, oh yeah,
Oh,
that's a great
yeah.
fucking movie.
Yeah.
That was so much fun.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk about something positive because there is one scene that I really liked in this movie.
Okay.
It maybe is another one that's sort of out of place, but I really love it, is the whole skin binding scene with the voodoo doll where all the needles are coming out of her eyes and her fingers and they have to write all over her. I love all of that kind of witchy imagery. It reminds me of, I know we're just like, what movie does this remind you of? But it reminds me of, oh my God, my brain went blank. But anyway, I'll come back to it. But it reminded me of, shit, it's in my brain. But I loved those visuals. Did you guys enjoy that scene while I Google this?
Yeah, so I really like the imagery part of it, of her writing on her body, of those needles like coming out of her cheekbones and stuff. I thought that was really cool. I didn't like, as much as we said before, sort of the conversation between the two women where she was telling her the story. That was a little too cheesy for me. But I do think the imagery of the needles was very, very cool.
Yeah, that Warlock is the movie I'm trying to think of. Where there's like when they're like nailing his footprints.
Right. Yeah,
that's what it reminded me of, and I responded very positively to that scene. Like I wasn't really paying attention to the story. Sorry, I'm being so harsh today. The story, but I was just like very into the witchy sort of mythology that the movie was building, and the way that it was executed I thought was really, really cool, because there apparently was no VHX.
They didn't use any CGI at all.
Thank you. Yeah, there's like almost none, because the Fandango would not give them a budget for it because they only wanted practical effects.
Well, I think it looks really cool. So it definitely paid off.
I have to agree. I like that scene as well, because there's two things that can get to me in a horror movie: people vomiting. So the vomiting in Satanic Panic, I thought like they got the sound effects down with the splashing and everything. Very effective. There's 2 movies I've nearly thrown up in them, and one was Audition for that reason.
Oh my God, yes.
And then the other thing that bothers me, like gets under my skin, is, and this is like a real life weird tick. It's not that weird, but also if it's done in a horror movie, it really, really gets to me, is having like hair in your mouth or in your throat.
Yeah.
And so there's like a sequence in the movie The Ring where I think she's dreaming about pulling hair out of her mouth and throat, which really really got to me.
Yeah.
And then that's kind of echoed here because, the daughter character, Ruby Modine, is, she's got the pins coming out of her fingertips and her hair or face, and blood coming out of her eyes, and she's got all this writing on her that looks really cool. But it's like when she starts to gag and pulls the hair out of her mouth, I'm like, that actually is getting me. Good job.
Yeah.
I will say a couple of positive things about the movie if we're opening the door
Let's
for that.
do it. Yeah.
Oh wait, really quickly. The only problem I have with that scene is that I think voodoo is very appropriative.
Yeah,
and that's the only thing. Like, it's obvious that they don't care that it is appropriative.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's that's something that just kind of makes me a little squirmy. But
that's a good thing to bring up, definitely.
Well, it's interesting. There actually is not a significant or pronounced voodoo tradition of image magic, I'm told. That's actually something that we take mostly out of European and especially British Isles witchcraft belief and myth. And so it's actually would be appropriate to use in a movie like this, but I'm not convinced the filmmakers know that.
There you go. That's the thing. I mean, that's what I said. I don't know that this movie has a both sidesism that I don't necessarily connect with in films typically. It can't figure out who its target is. They're the 1%, but they're also they're also kind of presented as being left leaning, except for that they're also, sacrificing virgins and whatnot. And I don't know. It feels very messy to me in a way that I don't trust. And maybe because I know the legacy of Cinestate. I don't know.
Yeah, I think one of the things is that we can sort of pick up on whether stuff was done intentionally or not. So when they talk about, Baphomet, and they're just throwing out there that they're going to summon Baphomet, he has 11, or he's Prince of Hell, he's got 3 heads. That's clearly that they're making that shit up. But when they have something that's kind of close, it's just that they stumbled upon it. It's not that they actually did research. And it's the thing of if you want to break the rules, you need to know them at first. Like that rule of writing, you have to know good grammar and sentence structure and whatever, and then you can break it for effect. I don't think that they were breaking things for effect. I think they were breaking things because they had 18 days and a low budget and maybe didn't do any kind of research ahead of time. And those circumstances can turn out okay. I always think about El Mariachi. Crazy low budget, shot with people who weren't real actors, and it turned out great because Robert Rodriguez actually did know what he was doing. He just was severely limited. Here they were severely limited, but I feel like again they just, when they got it right, it's because they were just stumbling across it. It's not because they were leading us to that.
Well,
I think that's true.
You know what? On that note, I will save us from any "well, actually" comments because
I'll
add an addendum to what I said earlier.
Where does Daniel get his water? Oh, well, actually.
Yes. But I'm the one who said it earlier. I'm like, 11 Princes of Hell? That's not any demonology I've ever heard of. But you know what? That doesn't mean there's not a source for it. There's these days you can go on, speaking of putting anything on Amazon, you can find any number of self-published books from dudes who call themselves like Reverend Alistair Nightshade that'll tell you all sorts of nonsense. And maybe the book is even good. I don't know. I haven't read it. So maybe there's one of those that they can point to and say, no, this was our source, douchebag. I'm like, okay, fine. All I can say is it's not a well-known not anything that I can place.
Yeah.
Speaking of addendums, listeners who are less familiar with our show might have done like a 180 earlier when I mentioned, oh hey, the Satanic Bible plagiarized this weird racist tract from 1896, and a lot of people are going like, so why are you guys Satanists then? Well, that's something we should probably mention, is the fact that on our show we are actually very, very critical of that book and its author, often to a degree that even annoys some people who actually agree with us. But nevertheless, while we do strive to present a diversity of eclectic opinions and perspectives on Black Mass Appeal, if we have one agenda, me in particular, I will admit, it is breaking the normalization of that sort of weird far-right authoritarian vibe that modern Satanism has had since the 60s, thanks mainly to this one guy. And
so we call him Stinky Tony because he actually has some writing about how he doesn't bathe because his natural musk is very alluring. And it reminded me of a guy that I used to go out to the goth clubs. He would be at the goth clubs. I would not go out with him, but you always knew when he was there because you could smell him. And so his name Stinky Tony is an homage to that.
Now wait a minute. Now we got to get deeper into the weeds because I've provided some context for that, because I've read some comments of people who say, hey, making fun of people who have trouble bathing is very ableist, which is true, but old Anton did not refuse to shower because he had any kind of disability. He did it because, and I'm not making this up, he was making this up, but I'm not making this up. He said that if you shower too often, it covers the natural smells of your body, which makes you artificially attractive to the wrong kinds of people and leads to you having the wrong babies. And this is why our gene pool is messed up.
That is a very weird take on eugenics.
Yes, it's
bizarre.
It's eugenics by way of BO.
I just thought he didn't make crimes against facial hair. I didn't realize how deep in the fascism he was.
Yes, this is the kind of Satanism we don't represent on Black Mass Appeal.
I'm glad you pointed that out.
And on that note, one thing I did like about the ending of this movie is I liked the little girl who plays the demon prince. That's actually a cliche to have a kid be the demon, but the kid was good. I liked her a lot.
Yeah, it was fun.
accidentally, I would assume, but the message she portrays at the end where she says the problem with this authoritarian might is right philosophy is there's always going to be someone stronger and better and more powerful than you. You can only exploit the weak for so long before someone comes along and tops you. And so quite accidentally, I think the movie has done a great job of refuting that particular outlook and that particular weird dead-end brand of satanic philosophy that is still kind of haunting our discourse. I will also say, I thought it was extremely funny, the scene earlier in the movie where they're getting ready for the ritual and Rebecca Romijn is like firing everyone up with like this MLM style speech about how everyone needs to commit harder.
Yeah. I wanted more of that. I really, because it was kind of in the beginning too. I needed more of that.
That was so great. And in fact, like, again, they should have pushed that joke harder. She should have had like a chart on the wall with, again, the all-seeing eye with the pentagram and saying, we're the original pyramid scheme or something like that.
See, you guys need to write this movie is what I'm hearing. I need a remix by you guys because you've already dropped like 5 really solid jokes.
Yeah, there are some good lines in this movie, like you were saying. I think Rebecca Romijn says when they're wanting to go out and like look for the girl, she's like, "We didn't sell our souls to traipse around outside like a bunch of goddamn hippies." Like, there's some funny lines, or even Jerry O'Connell when she slaps him and then he slaps her, and he's like, "Look what you made me do! I'm a feminist."
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I do think that there are things about this movie. I know we've been pretty harsh in our critiques, but there is an element of fun to this that is kind of undeniable.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I agree. And I really love Ruby Modine. It makes me sad that she had such a poor, horrible experience on this film because she is so watchable. She's so charming and fun. And her and Rebecca Romijn both, I thought, just were fantastic in this. And they were kind of, for me, the most enjoyable part to watch. But yeah, I mean, this is sort of an escapist, fun, silly movie that takes your minds off things, doesn't require a lot of you. I know that you guys have gone kind of deep in your analysis about Satanism, and I so appreciate that.
Absolutely.
It's been fascinating to learn all of that just listening to you guys. But I also think you can watch this as like a stupid popcorn flick that you don't think about at all. You know, it's that kind of a thing. And I do like the sort of campy send up of the rich, the sort of ultra rich. And I know that they didn't maybe follow through 100%, but I do think some of that's good. And you know, it looks good. Like the movie looks good, and I think it was competently made. I honestly think a lot of the problems lie less with the direction and more with the script.
Agree.
Yeah, I think this movie really wants to have a class conflict theme, and it just doesn't seem to know how. It seems like our collective opinion about this is, it's not bad, but it's a lot of missed opportunities.
I think that's a good summary of it. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I think that this would have been the perfect movie to have at a slumber party in the 8th grade.
Yeah, that's true. It would have been
some sex. So, you know, your little preteen hormones can get kind of tingly and looking at Jerry O'Connell in his tidy whities. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Like, I used to have a huge crush on him. So I was still appreciative of that scene.
Man, when he was in, what was that scene?
Slider? No,
wasn't he in the show about the Seascape, or what was it? Sequest.
No, he was in Sliders.
Okay, I guess there was a kid in Sequest,
Jonathan Brandis,
looked a lot like him. He had the same, that stupid 90s hair bowl cut.
On that guy. You mean split top loaf? Yeah, I remember that haircut.
Sequest was Jonathan Brandis, and sadly he is no longer with us.
Yeah. I had such a crush on him when I was little.
Yeah, he was an it. I was very big fan of him as well.
Even in that scene of Jerry O'Connell in his briefs, even there's like there's some good comic timing that kind of goes unappreciated. The fact that like the camera's on him and then it's off of him, and then a second later he's got his clothes off. Which like is easy to overlook because you're suddenly very uncomfortable where the scene is going. Yeah. But it is funny, at least as a visual gag.
Absolutely. So I know this has been the night of comparing the movie to other movies, but have you guys seen Extraordinary?
I love that movie.
So good.
I love that movie, but it has the same plot beat, right? Of the whole virgin thing and there being a resolution to dealing with that problem, but done in a way that is a lot more fun and a lot less problematic.
Yep.
So when I was watching this, I was kind of like, I should rewatch Extraordinary.
That's one that people are sleeping on for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
Have either of you other two seen Extraordinary? Are you a part of this fan club, or are we alone in this?
No, but I remember the poster for it because it has a sheet ghost, which
It does.
it
It
does.
has a
Visual gag that I
sheet
just love.
ghost.
I still love it. I mean, all
Well,
the way
you'll
back
have
to
to check it out.
Beetlejuice with Alec Baldwin
Mhm.
and Gina Davis putting the sheets on. Like, it's never not funny to me.
Amazing. All right. Any other thoughts on this movie before we wrap it up?
I feel a little bad for shitting on it so much because it is fun, and I feel like
Mhm.
a lot of what I've had to say has been kind of negative. But like, I had a good time, and I don't want to, I don't want to shit on it that much because
Yeah.
it's not like it's a bad movie. It's just, it wasn't what I wanted out of it.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
sometimes fun and dumb is what you want,
Yeah, you go in with low expectations. You go in with some friends and some booze, perhaps, if that's your thing. Certainly a lot of candy, and just have like that mentality of like a schlocky, good popcorny candy, little bit tipsy time, and just enjoy yourself that way. This is not a movie where you need to
agreed.
like turn down the lights and set a mood and no talking. No, do talk. Rocky Horror this shit. It'll be much more entertaining.
Yeah.
Yeah, the degree and depth of analysis that we've offered to it in the course of 2 hours is maybe inappropriate to the actual content and vibe of the film. But you know what? At the same time, like, it did leave those doors open for us. So
Yeah, and it was
Yeah.
an interesting conversation.
Absolutely. I loved the analysis that you guys brought to it because we were kind of like, it was fun. Let's hope they have more to say.
Well, I thought of another movie I think people are sleeping on.
Ooh.
Have you guys seen Starry Eyes?
Yes. That
I have
movie is
not.
awesome.
That movie is freaking awesome. And that was one
Oh,
of those
Ariel.
ones that I caught on Netflix, and I was like, oh, this is going to be some stupid schlock. And then I was like fully engrossed. Love
Mhm.
it.
It's excellent.
that movie has a great perspective on like class conflict and the
Mhm.
weird self-destructive American ambition shit that they indoctrinate us
Yes.
with. If you want if you want a really great take on that, that's Tabitha's completely correct.
Yeah, that bathroom
right, I'm
stall
adding it to
scene
my
lives
list.
rent free in my head.
Mhm.
Mhm. Awesome. Okay, so final recommendations. Tabitha, would you recommend?
With caveat.
Okay. Okay.
with the idea that you're going into this knowing, well, maybe not knowing all the things we talked about, because why even bother seeing a movie when you have literally experienced the entire plot? But if you're looking for that popcorn, fun, silly thing, yes. If you want to go into this because you want to get scared, no.
Right. That's fair. How about you, Simone?
So I think a lot of our talk about like this movie was actually kind of fun. Those are sort of our tips to you to make watching this movie more fun and enjoyable. But if would I recommend it? The answer is actually no, because there's so much more better out there.
That's
You're
fair.
not gonna rend your garments in regret over watching this movie, but just maybe your time better spent someplace else.
How about you, Daniel?
Well, I'm mildly reluctant to answer that question because now that we've learned a little bit more about the people who made this, maybe that should give me some pause before recommending it to anybody else. However, just the merits of the movie itself, yeah, sure, definitely. Because while there is certainly a lot to be critical of here, this is going to sound like a backhanded compliment, but it's really not. I have seen so many worse movies than this, and it is so easy to fuck up a movie like this beyond any level of potential redemption that looking at this now, I'm just like, yeah, no, I feel like, now Simone is correct. There are certainly better movies you could be watching, but if you're the kind of person that this movie really is calling out to, there are actually relatively few films like it that I feel are going to scratch that particular itch for you. So I would say stick to your own gut on this one. Your own instincts about whether you like this movie or you're going to like a film like this are probably correct. Although, of course, it's entirely subjective at the end of the day.
Yeah. How about you, Ariel?
Yeah, I would recommend it. I say, it's not treading any new ground, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think for my friends who are a little more art housey, I maybe wouldn't recommend. But for like if somebody's like, I want to watch something, what should I watch tonight? what's on Shudder, I'd be like, Satanic Panic's fun. That's a good time.
Yeah.
There's some good gore in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, great. So we don't have any listener mail this episode, but if you want to get in touch, maybe you have some thoughts about this movie, maybe you have some thoughts about many of the other movies that we talked about tonight, whatever the case may be, drop your thoughts and your questions in the email at rachel@zombiegirls.com. That's GRRLZ.com. Or you can come chat with us over on the Zombie Girls Facebook group, or follow us on Instagram and Twitter at ZG Podcast plural. If you're enjoying the show, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, wherever you're getting your reviews. And if you want to support us, please join the Patreon at patreon.com/zombiegirls, where you get lots of cool perks. You can join our Discord, and you get extended episodes on all the shows across the network. So before we go into our final plugs, Ariel, did you pick a movie for our next episode? Did you forget to pick? Oh, okay.
No.
Okay.
I'm just laughing because I think I might have picked the longest one when you told me not to do.
I said, give me a short movie. I specifically sent you that picture from the SNL skit.
So, to be fair, I picked the movie before you sent that, and I just... We're going to be watching The Long Walk, directed by Mattie Do.
Oh, is that the new? It just came out recently? Or?
It did.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just recently came out. It's about, it's about an old Laotian hermit who discovers that the ghost of a road accident victim can transport him back in time 50 years to the moment of his mother's painful death. So it's getting really good reviews, but it's...
Can we watch Satanic Panic?
Listen, I can pick something else. I just think this one's
No.
really good.
You've chosen. It's too late now. No, I've heard really good things about this, and I do want to watch it, but it is going to have to be a homework movie, so it's fine. It's fine. Only because it's long and going to be sad. And
well, see, that's the thing
life
is
long and
neither
sad.
of us would probably watch it without it being on the show because of those reasons, and I think we need to watch it. So
you're right. All right.
I didn't make you watch Nightingale, okay? So I feel like I should get some points for that.
I know. I kept being like, well, there's like 5 other movies I can suggest because I was worried you were going to start with Nightingale, which I'm sure is going to be excellent, but I just don't have, it's so emotionally expensive, and I am bankrupt at the moment.
Fair.
So, all right. But enough of this. Let's get back to our amazing guests. I want to first of all thank Daniel, Tabitha, and Simone for coming on the show. I knew that it was going to be fun. I knew that you guys were going to bring all kinds of fabulous insight, and not only did you not let me down, you exceeded my expectations. I enjoyed the notes, I enjoyed the recommendations, I enjoyed learning about certain tattoos. This has been an absolute blast.
Yeah, this was fabulous.
Yeah. Well, thank you
and
for
you are
having
welcome
us
to come back
on.
anytime.
Okay, we'll have
Anytime.
to take you up on that.
Oh, good. I hope so. I'm glad we didn't scare you off with my brain dead self today. All right. But before you go, why don't you guys lay some more plugs on us so that now that our listeners know you and are as obsessed with you as we are, where can they find you guys?
Okay, so you can find the podcast Black Mass Appeal on pretty much every podcasting platform that there is. Or you could just go to our website and listen directly there, or visit the show notes or our other resources, and that's blackmassappeal.com. And if you want to email us, it's blackmassappealpod@gmail.com. The pod is important. We don't know who has blackmassappeal@gmail.com. They have not reached out to us. I'm sure they've gotten some really weird emails, and we apologize. And then you can find us on social media. We've got, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter as @BlackMassAppeal.
Nice.
Also, so yeah, one more thing. So again, we do new BMAs every other Tuesday. And also, you can back us over on Patreon, where sometimes we do bonus shows. We've got the BMABCs, we've got Conspiracy Weary, and we also have very occasionally our specifically Sam Neill themed BMA bonus show about the films of Sam Neill, because one of the 3 of us really digs Sam Neill. And Tabitha, do you want to tell people what the name of that show is?
It is Kneel Before Pod.
Amazing.
I love it. Okay, peak sexy Sam Neill for you.
Well, My favorite movie's Event Horizon. I like him when
Nice.
his eyes are all cut up and he's covered in blood and stuff.
Hey, at least it wasn't Possession.
Well,
And I feel-
Possession is the reason why we started Kneel Before Pod, because
Oh.
I made Daniel and Tabitha watch it. We actually found out that I watched the European version and they watched the US version. It was completely fucking different.
Sucks.
Which are not
Really?
those are not the same movies.
I wonder
are
if I
not.
saw the bad version, because I'm always like, why is everybody so like in love with this movie? It's fine.
If you can find the original director's cut, like the European version, it is still a really fucking weird movie, but I liked it. The US version apparently is incomprehensible. So like just don't even bother with that one.
Incomprehensible. Yeah, that's the
but-
one I saw, I think.
Yeah, and so I was talking about this to Daniel and Tab, and I think it was it Daniel or was it Tabitha who was just like made an offhand joke that we should have a Sam Neill podcast and call it Kneel Before Pod. And I'm like, I'm going to take you up on that because we were talking about Possession.
Here's what it was. I said, hey, if we had a Sam Neill podcast, what would it be called? Almost immediately, Tabitha came up with the title, and then we're like, fuck, now we have to do it.
It was too good a name to leave.
It is really good. You gotta TM that as fast as you can.
Right.
That's a really good one. Amazing.
Although I think Sam Neill in that movie, he's kind of proto Sam Neill. Like he almost doesn't even. He's so young that he doesn't even look like
Maybe.
himself.
Yeah, he is the
Yeah.
fetus of Sam Neill in that one for
Mhm.
sure. For sure. That's I love Event Horizon, so good call on that one.
I'm such a big fan. Like that, I love horror movies that like kind of bend like the genre. Like, oh, it should be an alien movie, but it's not. It's a fucking haunted house movie on a fucking spaceship. So good.
Awesome. Any other plugs? I know you guys got a lot going on.
You can follow me on Twitter at Tabitha Slander if you want to see pictures of my cat.
I
Nice.
do want to see pictures of your cat.
And you can follow me at Simone Lasher on Twitter and Instagram if you also want to see pictures of my cat. There's a lot of cats.
I also want to see pictures of your
We
cat.
always want to see pictures of everybody's cats. So
Yeah. We have a channel in the Discord called Show Me Your Kitties, because all I want is a feed of cats.
Yeah, ours is familiars.
Oh, brilliant.
You
Oh,
know
I
what's
love
up. Yeah. What about you, Daniel? Can anyone stalk you online?
I don't have a cat, so
Well, you kind of do. You got my cat.
that's true. My primary Twitter account is actually just our at Satanic SF account, which I'm not. I always want to make a firmer delineation between that and my personal Twitter, but then I often just forget which one I'm logged in on. So sometimes all of our Satanist followers just get my take on shit, and so
I bet they love it.
complaints are few and far between. So
Oh, good.
Not a feedback forward group, the Satanists. Is that what you're telling me? Awesome. All right. Well, thank you again for coming on the show. You really elevated it. Anytime you want to come back, you are more than welcome. All right, great. Well, on that note, everybody check out Black Mass Appeal. Ariel, would you do me a solid and take us out?
Yeah, thanks so much for listening to another episode of the More Deadly podcast. Thank you so much to our guests from Black Mass Appeal. This has been so much fun, and we so appreciate all of your input. This was really great. And for those of you who are patrons, today we are going to be talking about our favorite satanic films in our extended episode. So if you're a patron, stick around for that. Otherwise, we'll catch you back here in 2 weeks. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Perfect. I love it.
That's fantastic. Thanks to everyone for listening, and thanks to my co-host Ariel, who is always willing to come on here and geek out about horror with me. And finally, thanks to the women who make the horror films we love so much. Production on this episode was done by yours truly. Editing was done by Ariel Messman-Rucker, and our theme music is More Deadly by Elizabeth Kyle and Eric Newell. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the extended episode, aka More Deadly After Dark, aka the Devil
Perfect.
Oh, Ariel, I just had so much fun. What about
Yeah,
you?
that was great. Honestly, I'm always nervous when we have guests come on the show, especially because you already knew them and I did not. And I've just been listening to their podcast for a while.
Right.
So I was a little nervous, but they were really, really nice. And yeah, it was so much fun getting their perspective on this movie because they brought up stuff that did not even occur to me. So
yeah,
I
appreciated that we got like primary source information.
Yeah. I know, quoting from books. Come on.
I mean, and that's what their podcast is like. I'm just like, how?
Yeah, it's
I mean,
so research heavy.
Yeah, I'm impressed by it, and also just like, I could never.
No. Just the amount of research we do is a lot, you know?
I feel like, oh my God, wow, I really, really put in a ton of effort on this one. I read 4 whole interviews and a Wikipedia page. And here he is like, looking back at the demonium from 1893. I'm like, no. But I totally like, I'm impressed by it and I value it. And I think it really added to the show.
Yeah. Especially because it's such a silly movie, but I love that they were able to kind of do all this intellectual stuff with just the little bit of meat that was on the bones there.
There's so many movies I would love to talk to them about too, but unfortunately we have some rules.
We do, and for good reason, but I
feel like they recommended something though with a non-binary actor.
Yeah, the Satan Santa.
Maybe we'll have them on for the Christmas episode.
I think we should totally do that. That would be awesome.
Okay.
If they're available, we should book them.
Yeah, we will hit them up. All right, cool. So we're going to talk about one of their favorite subjects on our extended episode, Ariel. What is that?
We're talking about satanic movies.
Oh, yeah.
And some of our favorite ones. Now, funny enough, while we were playing that little "this movie reminds us of that movie" game, we referenced pretty much all these movies.
Did we? Oh,
not all of them, but a lot of them.
A lot of them. Yeah, I'm looking at the list now.
There are a few that we didn't, you know.
Yeah,
but...
yeah. Well, we can touch on those a little more briefly.
Yeah, so before we get into the list, I just want to say there are some bigger movies that we left off this list because they're ones that we've talked to death about.
Yeah.
So
does anybody need someone to recommend The Exorcist to them? No.
Right, exactly.
You've already been knowing.
No, we didn't. The Omen isn't on here, Rosemary's Baby, etc. Stuff like that we left off. So anyways, should we get started?
Yeah, let's get started.
Okay, so the first one is one that they mentioned. It's The Babysitter.
Yes. You want to talk about a movie that is just fun.
Oh my gosh.
Dumb.
It's so fun and so dumb. And it has the splashiest, bloodiest gore happening in it. All the characters are funny and just like so much fun to watch on screen. It's got a great cast. It's just a blast, and I know that people are not as big a fan of the second one. And granted, it is not as good, but it's still a lot of fun.
Okay.
No?
I mean, movies are subjective. If you like it, I love it. That's
I just
fine.
think like it has a lot of the dumb gory moments that are that made the first one so fun. It's just the plot isn't quite as like together.
I'm just grumpy about how they retcon a particular character.
I mean, that is fair.
Yeah,
completely fair.
Like, to be fair, I didn't go into it being like, this is going to be, you know, the Citizen Kane of babysitter movies. But, you know, that's really my only real gripe with it. I do love Jenna Ortega a lot. So, and that was one of the earliest things I saw her in. So that part of it's really great. Just like
I love how much horror she's doing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've listened to this week's Bloody Good Horror yet. I don't know if you were able to catch it live.
No, I wasn't.
Sorry if you weren't able to catch it live.
I mean, I have the ability to catch it live.
Fair enough.
I'm in the top secret club too, okay, Rachel?
Okay, I'm sorry. Mistakes were made. I take it back. You're in the cabal.